Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kanchi Shah, and I head the business for the EMEA markets at Strategic. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all to today's virtual conference on performance by design, reimagining workstations for innovation and collaboration. I welcome you on behalf of Dell Technologies, Microsoft, and Strategic. Ladies and gentlemen, today's workstations play an integral role in promoting efficiency, flexibility, and safety. Cognitive technologies are the fastest growing area in modern computing. Applications that leverage human intelligence and the power of technology, including data analytics, complex processing, statistical modeling, and visualizations, are now augmented by the powerful machine learning algorithms, shortening the time between ideas and results. Over the next 2.5 hours, we look forward to high impact conversations and immensely valuable business and technology insights. We appreciate you taking our time from your busy schedules to be present with us today. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we would request you to please address your questions to our speakers using the chat feature on your screens. Should you need any further assistance, please do not hesitate to visit the help desk in the lobby, and a member of Team Strategy will be happy to help. To kickstart today's session, I welcome Mr. Shantanu Ganguly, the CEO, Strategy, to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, Shantanu.
Hi everyone, this is Shantanu Ganguly, CEO at Strategic, and this morning I welcome you all to this virtual conference where our core theme today is performance by design, the ever-growing importance of the workstation. So let me kickstart today's conversations with a small keynote where I share a few snippets of why workstations today in context of the global pandemic are more important than ever before. And I have six considerations or highlights to share with you as part of this keynote. So the first point I wanted to discuss is the rise of digital workforce and hybrid work environment with multiple phases of pandemic coming in, going out and coming back again. Beyond the digital workforce, we are also now prepared to sometimes work from our homes or as much remotely. And when things are better, we move back to our workplace, offices, and also balance out working remotely as well as from office, right? So this is a complete hybrid work environment, which will continue for possibly some more months, if not years, till this whole thing stabilizes further and as much. So combined with that, there is a NASCOM research which tells us that about 98% organizations had more than 90% of their workforce working remotely during the recent second pandemic wave that India experienced, right? So this shows the digital preparedness of organizations, businesses, all down to their employees, and their ability to flexibly balance remote working and collaboration and ensure minimal impact to the business. The third point here is about the importance of data being created, generated, analyzed, insights, inferences being drawn for business outcomes, and then overall monetization, connecting back and flowing back to investments or return on investments, as we call it, linking it back to business value and business outcome imperatives. So that whole chain has the workstation at its epicenter, and then that's where data capital at the edge is growing as a theme, as a subject, and is of critical importance. Fourth point I wanted to highlight is design engineering, and here it is moved beyond the speeds and feeds and performance elements of the hardware, Today, a workstation and its importance and I would say outcome that it delivers or the productivity that it empowers an employee with is a combination of hardware and of course all the diverse software elements and application elements that goes embedded together. So combining specific software elements, capabilities in each sub building blocks of the workstation, and topped up with the business applications that gets further either come preloaded or gets further loaded onto the workstation, which and then this combination in totality is what drives supreme performance excellence both for the individual as well as for the teams and overall for the business. The fifth point, which again the pandemic has sort of brought out and emphasized ever than before altogether, is about the need and ability to continue business. So it's about business resilience and of course overall security. As remote working has become the new order of the day, there are new risks and vulnerabilities around network security, around internet security. All that got exposed and there were multiple incidents. Maybe many businesses have gone through. There's learning curve and journey that people have gone through, and there are tighter controls and preventive measures that are getting implemented or have already got implemented to make sure that this whole operations can be controlled and in an as much secure and resilient manner. Last point is about the whole concept of digital and remote collaboration or collaborate from anywhere kind of a concept, where the ability to seamlessly collaborate, be productive, and the value and experience that gets delivered to employees, to customers, and to all stakeholders, partners, business partners, alliance partners, suppliers, everybody in the ecosystem overall delivers business, employee, and customer experience, right? And that's where again the importance of the workstation being a foundational uh, I would say device and instrument to propel and fuel that experience part of the ROI is critically important. So with these broad six themes, or I would say key measurement areas of a workstation that I sort of just highlighted or narrated, I'll bring my part of the talk to a close now, because we have a lineup of quite a few eminent industry experts, technology experts, uh, chief information officers, security officers, technology officers from diverse industry verticals joining us today. And we have a great lineup of sessions ahead of us. So together with all of you, I remain equally intrigued and interested to listen into them. Thank you for staying tuned and have a great day and conference ahead today.
Thank you, Shantanuda, for setting the tone for today. Up next, ladies and gentlemen, our speakers will deliberate on the role of workstations in an ever evolving post disruption economy, meeting the expectations of a digital workforce whilst balancing the need of a digital workplace, and the essential guidance in navigating this digitization journey. Sharing their inputs on today's session, we have with us Mr. Bilal Lone, Head Health Operations and Digital Innovations, Bajaj Allianz General Insurance, Mr. Rajat Arora, Senior Director and India CTO, GUS Education, and Mr. Vivekanand Mancheri, the Brand Director, Client Solutions Business at Dell Technologies. To moderate the session, let's welcome Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategy. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I'm going to be your host today in what promises to be a truly fascinating conversation to speak about the changing contours of how organizations within industry are reimagining the very concept of work by itself. And while they do that, for them to be able to equally take a very judicious and prudent revisit to the medium that employees today use to communicate with each other, to collaborate with each other, and by and large, deliver incremental and more innovative outcomes to their organizations. Because as the world of work is changing, newer and emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, automation, robotics are helping make this shift significant by the very mechanization that we used to see in prior generations of various facets of the concepts of work. Uh, Combined with these trends are the shifts in equal skill sets, which have accompanied the introduction of newer technologies in what we call the workspace, one that is certainly decomposed as we speak. And to join me in conversation on these nuances, as well as many, many more, please put your hands together in no specific order. Rajat Arora, Senior Director in India, Chief Technology Officer, GUS Education at India. Rajat, welcome. Delighted that you could join us.
Thank you, Arjun. It's always been a pleasure. Thanks.
Bilal Lod, Head of Health Operations and Digital Innovations at Bajaj Allianz. Bilal, welcome. We are supremely delighted that you could make it from your schedule.
Thanks, Arjun. It's a pleasure to join this.
And last but certainly not the least, Vivekanand Manjari, Director, Workstations and Specialty Client Business, Dell Technologies in India. Vivek, welcome, privileged and equally delighted, sir.
Thank you, Arjun. Pleasure to be on this esteemed panel. Look forward to the discussion today.
Gentlemen, we've got what promises to be a very, very fascinating 35 minutes ahead of us because clearly, Rajat, and with your permission, if I could come to you. Everything that we knew as sacrosanct perhaps 18 months back stands changed. The physical office or the workspace stands decomposed. In parallel, another variable that is emerging is the whole concept of the gig economy and the digital workforce, one that is predominantly displaced across geographies. And of course, the increasing role that each of us has seen technology play not just in our lives, but in our professional capacities as well, in its ability to enable us to do more. Rajat Arora, I come to you with the primary question of how you see these variables kind of converging to that inflection point where organizations can envision being able to radically alter positive outcomes in the future. Rajat Arora.
All right. So, in my view, Arjun, looking at the face of digitization in getting consumers, or rather enhancing student experience, we are looking at new ways or innovation and revenue enhancements within the higher education industry as a whole. Of course, due to the COVID-19 and the pandemic that's just reshaped our lives, we see that there are financial concerns facing the higher education sector in these times as we've transitioned into a difficult phase. We've looked at ways to diversify revenue streams in order to increase our money making capacity for that matter. And we've come up with new models and emerging models in this space. It's not been easy in the pandemic times, as you rightly said. There is enough technologically enabled programs that we've now introduced that we are seeing as a bigger opportunity to address some of our core concerns in terms of when it comes to the higher education world. What I can talk about a little bit is that how these models are reshaping the way we do business, right, in the higher education space in these times. There is the online undergrad and the postgrad degrees that are transitioning into the existing degrees online and creation of brands from a new online degree proposition for our students. There's been immersive workforce ready professional programs that we've run in these times. That constitutes, let's say, short and targeted boot camps focused on improving student employability in specific disciplines. Then we've got education brokering happening for employers as well. Uh, you know, this refers to the establishment of employers' partnership with some of the employees to deliver higher education for them. There is a lot of opportunity we see in terms of adult learners in the higher education space, especially if I talk of the UK, where the opportunity is to address that ever increasing upskilling and reskilling needs by the employers. And very interestingly, we see that there is a larger chunk of population which falls in a bracket of, let's say, 24 years and above, which was earlier, 18 to 24 category. And so we've started to partner with some of the corporates outside. And then we commercialize the education IP also for other institutions. So these are the models that I've seen in the current times of changing times due to COVID and the pandemic, that because of digitalization, the higher education space has been affected and impacted, and we have to tune a little bit, uh, in order to keep ourselves relevant and, of course, generating revenue for the company. So, yeah.
Well, that's powerfully articulated, because Bilal, I'm going to bring that to you in similar fashion, but I'm also going to add a supplementary aspect to it, which is, see, Rajat just spoke about the whole concept of how disruption or crisis-induced situations are mandating organizations to tweak and rethink, perhaps, operating and business models. One other important aspect is also this whole concept of the employer, which is the enterprise, and the employee relationship today, one that is increasingly driven through the medium of what we call the mobile workstation or the precision workstation. In such a scenario, and as perhaps from your vista and your space within industry, how are you seeing organizations be equally able to refashion employee experience and therefore foster a higher sense or a culture of collaboration with the help of technology? Bilal Lo.
Yes, Arjun, thanks. So Arjun, as Vivek spoke on, Rajat spoke on, the priorities that the industries has, as a, because of the new, new era that has, suddenly, come forth. So there are, there are a lot of industries, and similarly, insurance industry has, as I come from insurance industry, every industry had done some kind of digital transformation. But suddenly, from last year, the organizations had to think beyond what they had done, right? So one is you had to suddenly remove, go to a remote culture. Their workforce, you have to move to work from home. You have to see whether your assets, your the systems are ready. But at the same time, you had to also see whether your transformation that you had done till date, is that really ready? Are you ready to take that and serve your customers in the same way, without any disruption, without any
Indeed.
any seamlessly?
Indeed.
So there are a lot of things where organizations had to prioritize. For example, when we move to work from home, or companies move to remote culture, the productivity was the biggest concern for organizations. Will they be able to continue with the same productivity? Because you have the same workforce, you have to continue with the same workforce, in fact lesser than that, because of XYZ reasons. People were not able to immediately move. All the 100% of workforce was not able to move to 100% of productivity in from day one. So that was one way companies had to look beyond. So the priority was, how can we move to 100% productivity, or the same productivity, or better than that, right?
Right.
Secondly, the transformation that was done, maybe that was done in the silos. For example, if I talk about insurance industry, the sales, the transformation which is required for a salesperson to go to market and market insurance to the customers, policies to the customers. So there was a different kind of systems were given to them. Similarly, for uh, teams who are in the back end, say operations. There's a separate set of transformation or systems or automations which were done and given to them, which were helping them,
Indeed, sir.
serve the customers. But it was never, done uh, in such a way that way everything is stitched together. It was in a disintegrated. Everything was done in a disintegrated way.
In a very
I'm
decomposed
sure
fashion,
you agree
really.
with me,
No,
right?
because that's an
So,
interesting
but
point, Bilal. In a very, very decomposed fashion of sorts is really what you're articulating, isn't it? Because I find that very interesting. And if you could just stay there, Vivek, I'm going to bring that to you. Both Bilal as well as Rajat very, very beautifully articulated in summary, if I were to kind of cull it all out. Spoke about two fundamental things. The first was reimagined situations call for reimagined concepts of modernization. And as modernization and transformation go hand in hand together, what Bilal spoke about, the whole concepts of productivity, I want to bring those to you to get your views on how, from not just your own perspective, but also from Dell Technologies and your larger partnership ecosystem, you're seeing this whole convergence come together, and therefore your ability to partner industry in driving more resilient journeys forward, ones that are more confident and more positively inclined. Vivek.
Sure. I mean, very relevant theme, and you, I think, aptly summarized it. So at Dell Technologies, right? I think we all, as a company, we think that we are one of the largest startups in the world. And that's what our founder keeps saying, right? So right from the outset, the company had taken some steps, in fact, in terms of maturity, much higher than our peers in operating in a fairly distributed remote work environment. So we always had flexible, work from home policies even before the onset of the pandemic, right? So there were learnings from that experience, which helped us not just reorient internally when, the pandemic came upon us, but also being advisors to some of the largest enterprises, we were in a good position to provide them the right solutions. And I'll probably start off by saying that most of the companies that came to us post the onset of the pandemic, I think they came in waves. Some of them were early adopters. They understood that it was not a 2 or 3 month disruption. This was going to be the norm for maybe 12 to 18 months onwards. So they came to us asking for what should we think more longer term to drive two things, which in fact the leaders on the call called out. One is, since PC is the mode or the channel through which they are going to do most of their work, how do we make PC the numero uno productivity device, right? First question. The second part, I think, which even Rajat alluded to, is their own industries were getting disrupted. So, as part of business outcomes, what role can the PC play? And specifically in that context, how can a specialized PC like a fixed or a mobile workstation bring the right business outcomes, right? So, those were kind of the two themes which I think are relevant to what we went through. And to each of those, and I'll probably take a couple of industry examples here. Take the example of education, which we spoke about. Within education, the entire value chain was I saw two things happening. I think education service providers themselves, as well as people who are in mainstream education, be it K-12 all the way up to higher technical education, saw challenges in the way learning was being enabled. How do you improve classroom outcomes was, I think, the core problem. But that problem was not just about the technology that was available in the classroom. It was also about how do you make content and content delivery more engaging, right? And in that context, if you see, again, coming to the product side of things, at Dell Technologies, the workstation portfolio that we have, enables one remote collaboration by making content collaboration in content creation itself fairly democratized, be it through the certified AR, VR, mobile or fixed workstations that we have, be it the use of, I think, the processing power that workstations bring, which are slightly higher end. You get the best Intel Xeon processors, reliable memory technology, the NVIDIA cards. So some of those highlights itself, they bring a certain level of productivity along with it that enable the collaboration that the disruption wanted, right? So that was number one. The second part is, which I wanted to talk about is, it is not just, the classroom experience. In a lot of technical streams today, we are talking to customers where they are saying, how do I ensure that my students and my teachers are able to collaborate and actually use content real time to, for example, how do you virtually create an experiment that used to happen in a lab? How do they learn, right? Those kind of scenarios we are able to create through, in India, we were kind of in the process of setting up a center of excellence for workstations, where you can create workflows in a lab, which is well in a secure environment, where customers can actually run certain workflows remotely and can collaborate. So all these outcomes are possible through the right choice of technologies. And I think the bottom line really is, uh, don't think one size fits all. It has to be segmented for the industry. We need to think longer term, and the choice of technology, when we say, when you decide for a particular use case, if it's specialized, you want to go with workstations, think longer term. Don't just think about the product. I think every solution provider can bring the product, but it's about bringing the product and the ecosystem to, and the right interplay, so that you get the right productivity outcome to enable collaboration.
That's fascinating, because Rajat, I'm going to bring that to you. You see, each of you in your own way have kind of articulated the whole concepts for the need to rethink traditional models of operation. Now, well, we would be, or I certainly would be, quite want to ask you about this whole dynamics of the evolving digital collaboration between the student and the teacher. Uh, but before I even do that, Rajat, wouldn't it be unfair if I were not to ask you about how, even at Gus Education, and obviously in your experience with the overall ecosystem, how collaboration is being manifested today within employees for them to be even able to be productive and be innovative in radically changing the relationship between a student and a teacher today. So when you look at that, how are you seeing the judicious and prudent use of technology in being able to foster first within the whole enterprise this concept of collaboration in its truest and most seamless sense?
Very, very relevant question again, Arjun. See, digital is reshaping, right, the customer experience in almost every sector. Touch based on that. So what we found out that for institutes or the ed tech companies, right, to build value and provide compelling student experience at a probably at a lower cost, they really need to commit to a next generation operating model. Right? This operating model is a new way of running the organization that combines both digital technologies and then operational capabilities in a very integrated manner, in very well sequenced way, to achieve that step change improvements in the revenue, in the student experience, and then overall cost. So a simple way to visualize this operating model is to think of it as having two parts, each requiring companies to adopt major changes in the way they work. The first part would be to involve a shift from running uncoordinated efforts within silos, and I think Bilal touched on that earlier, to launching an integrated operational improvement program organized around student journeys, overall journeys, right? The set of interaction the student has with the institute when receiving those services, as well as the internal journeys within the organization, which is the end-to-end processes inside the company. Right? And then the second part is a shift from using individual technologies, operational capabilities and approaches in a piecemeal manner, right? And applying them to a journey in combination and in the right sequence to achieve that compounded impact. So typically we see in our case three key capabilities or approaches to improve the operations. One is the digitization part, which is the process of using the tools and technologies to improve the journeys. Then is the advanced analytics, which is the autonomous processing of the data using sophisticated tools and discover insights and make recommendations, because that provides intelligence to improve decision making, right? And can essentially enhance the journey from where a non-linear thinking way is required. And then the lastly would be the IPA, which is the intelligent process automation, which is again an emerging set of new technologies, that will combine the fundamental process of design with the RPA and the machine learning. So essentially, these are the three key capabilities that we within the edtech space we've seen, we've sort of used, and that really enhances the collaboration between the student and the teacher relationship, as well as internally within the company, within the organization as a whole, as well. Yeah.
That's very, very interesting because Bilal, if I were to come to you, the insurance sector, you're one of the largest players in that sector, equally has a significant amount of the workforce distributed. Because you've got agents, you've got folks on the street, you've got people at different branches and so on and so forth. When you kind of look at all of that, Bilal, I'd like to ask you a very pointed question. How important is the role of the workstation or the medium, the endpoint, in being able to foster a sense of digital collaboration that will help organizations such as yourselves towards a more innovative future, one that has significantly incremental outcomes to be realized?
Yeah. So, Arjun, I said rightly, it has the workforce has to be evolved. They have to have right set of tools with them to perform, right? Particularly in today's era. So one thing which we had already started long back is we had focused on, like, the last few years have been, from decentralization to centralization. If you have operations, distributed, which was very, very unproductive kind of, phenomena. So, like us, a lot of companies, I think every company worked. How can we centralize? That was one, era which went, and then a lot of companies centralized their operations. But we went beyond centralization. We thought we should give power to the end user. It can be
Indeed.
a customer, it can be an IMD or intermediary, it can be our sales guy, it can be our service guy who is in the field or anywhere in the company, anywhere in the in the country. So the most important thing for this to happen was giving them tools such as an app, which is a well connected end to end with all the functionalities which is required to perform that. For example, for an operations person to perform, or let's take an example of intermediary. Intermediary have been traditionally used to come to offices, give their papers, all the kind of paperwork. But we really inculcated the culture of digital in our intermediaries from the from long back. So we started that journey, and it was very easy in today's era to completely move them on the digital space. So I
Indeed.
think you have to one give them an end-to-end integrated apps. I would say one, so that not only, for example, in insurance industry, companies majorly used to think of issuance of the policy as a back-end operation, right, or claims. But there's so many other activities or other things which are linked to an intermediary or an end customer's servicing an end customer, which were never thought of, that we should connect them, and in the entire ecosystem of that digital transformation. But I
That's
think
a
it is
fact.
very, very important nowadays to have everything. Customer will not wait. If customer has given a policy, if you give a choice to customer that whether you want to wait for 1 day or 2 days
Uh,
for
Certainly not
issuing
going to
your.
happen with the digital customer of today and the evolving customer of tomorrow. But I'm going to bring that to you, Vivek. You see, because one of the points that we've also observed, which is perhaps an evolving scenario, is that with this whole digital workspace of sorts and with distributed workforce, enterprise expectations from employees has also radically changed. Today, an Arjun Vishwanathan or a Vivekanand Manjari or a Rajat or a Bilal are expected to be able to do more because of this digital explosion. So when you kind of bring that together, how from a Dell Technologies perspective, are you equally also looking at workstations or the endpoint devices in such nuanced fashion that will help employees such as myself perhaps be able to upskill and uplift the outcomes that we are generating for the organization? And therefore, what is the innovation that we as from industry could look at Dell Technologies being able to infuse into these rapidly changing journeys? Vivekanand Manjari.
Sure. I think you kind of summarized it well. I was just picking off some themes that came from Rajat and Bilal, both very interesting comments. So I summarize, whatever they said. I'm just trying to kind of create a horizontal theme, right? They specifically spoke about the right tools so that the employee is having the power to give the right outcomes to the end customer, irrespective of the industry. The second piece that they also mentioned is how does the endpoint and through that the employee harness the power of data that is available today, because he needs to be able to make the right decision quickly. Earlier, what was happening through multiple touch points today can culminate at the endpoint, provided the technology is right and can have the right productivity enabled at the endpoint, right? So around these two things, I think what at Dell Technologies, as leaders in the precision workstation market, the precision brand is number one globally. We've always been at the forefront of innovation on multiple what would you say, dimensions or factors. One is we were first to the market to bring a lot of innovation just in the form factor. We were the first to launch the mobile workstation, the lightest mobile workstation, etc. Those were just aesthetically aesthetic innovations which made the device easy to use. But now in today's day and age, the workstation has got a much more critical role to play because of what we just discussed. So in terms of innovation, right, number one, by design, workstations are today capable enough to be a very powerful endpoint. Uh, what workload, and I'm probably generalizing a bit, what workload typically required a data center to look at different data silos to process and take to end customer as an outcome or a recommendation, that processing power is available today at the endpoint itself through the workstation, through the advancements in the CPU, the right choice of the GPU itself, depending on if it's a graphics or a data intensive workload, and the ability, like I earlier said, to integrate with AR VR headsets, right? All of that. So the ecosystem play is one important thing to look at. The other piece, which is more, I think, true innovation, is the tools that are being used have to ensure a higher level of productivity, which means basics have to be there. Today's workstations have a software that comes in most Dell notebooks. In fact, workstation has something called a Dell Precision Optimizer. It's actually an AI-based platform that is shipped free with all workstation. It actually understands what the user needs, what are his typical workloads, and accordingly optimizes the resource allocation, which means your most often used applications and resources will work faster, right? And it is able to customize it for the individual's requirement. So it learns based on how the individual uses the first 2 weeks. It has a sense of, okay, these are his usage patterns. Therefore, I need to have so much of CPU available when this application is running. So that allocation is, so it has a brain running inside, right? The other thing it also does is, like I said, the evolution of that technology in the future is going to be a workstation which even knows when it might fail, and therefore might trigger a request to somebody in your support team saying, hey, you know what, I think in the next 10 days, it's going to either have a disk failure or probably the CPU might have an issue. Why don't you send an engineer in 2 days to just take a look? So, the tool itself is intelligent enough to ensure that the outcomes are met and the productivity levels are maintained, right? Now, the third piece, which, I mean, needless to talk about, it is not just the workstation, the ecosystem we mentioned. So in some of these industries like insurance, for example, while employees are working remotely, the data sets that they need to look at to be able to, give the right, recommendations or outcomes are so vast that you can't do just with a small, display. You need the right front of screen experience through the choice of device that enables you to connect multiple displays. So the workstations today are getting smaller and smaller, but at the same time don't compromise on the ability to maximize the output on the front of screen experience. So on all these dimensions, right, core, specs, be it the ecosystem or the software that is built into the workstation, all these innovations are happening in parallel to ensure that irrespective of the industry, productivity levels are maintained irrespective of the workload. The second piece, like I said, the device itself has zero downtime, is intelligent enough to customize its resource allocation and ensure there are minimal instances of downtime.
That's quite brilliant, really, because, gentlemen, I do have a view on the time. We've got about 8 minutes. Rajat, I'm going to come to you with a very, very important question, and one that begs the time that it requires is we've clearly seem to have established in this dialogue the fact that while operating models and businesses themselves have radically changed, who have their abilities and their capacities to be able to redefine even what productivity means today. Uh, Radically different from how we perhaps used to look at it about 18 months back. Now, when you look at all of that and you see the centrality of the endpoint, which is the machine that I use as the medium, what is your essential guidance on, and to this wonderful audience of IT and business folks who are tuning in today, to be able to modernize that at a very fundamental level so that you're truly able to achieve the outcomes that you perhaps hadn't even imagined could be achieved? How should organizations even approach this journey?
Right. So I think the journey has to be seen from an employee and a customer standpoint. You'll have to see both sides of the coin and look at engagement models, look at making them more productive uh, throughout the crisis that we've witnessed, right? What are the right sort of effective solutions that are both scalable and then flexible, enough to cater to the needs of the business? Depending on your current size of the organization, ID infrastructure, and the types of technology that you deploy, they they should be tested. They should be rather battle tested strategies that such as in this case, in these times, what we've been using is the Azure VDIs, right? Windows Virtual Desktop solution to ensure that this particular remote access solution provides us that particular secure connectivity, uh, organizational application wide or the data 24 by 7 on any device and working from anywhere, most importantly, right? So it helps you to maintain that control, that tracking, reporting, auditing, and all of those perspectives. So I think what we've done in our case is we've deployed the infrastructure, the automation, the monitoring tools, the kind of network topologies, in a seamless and a secure environment to work from home, enabling employees to be productive from anywhere, any location, uh, the right qualified technology stacks, with end-to-end connectivity, endpoint security, uh, ready to go hardware that ships directly to the end users. Those are the things that we have, done internally to ensure that we're able to keep up with these connected times, and make our workspaces more connected and more digitized in that sense. So I think for organizations, this poses a lot of opportunity in terms of significant gains and cost savings. Right, organizations can scale up rapidly without investing in their workspaces. They could yield real estate savings, and so those are the kind of benefits we would draw out of. Even in these times, the positive side of it is that uh, you would reach out to diverse demographies, right? You would hire the best talents from the globe and not be just contained in that local space to work. So I think, in a nutshell, I think employees would save both time and money. Overall, the organizations then has the capability to reduce costs and increase productivity simultaneously. So I think those are the key things. What we've done, and I would advise the IT leaders across the board, various industries to also look at. I'm sure they are doing it because That's the need of the hour.
But Bilal, if I could come to you, similar question. Do you think that this workstation is going to become the most focal piece of infrastructure infused with the intelligence that the future calls for or the future clamors for? And do you think this device modernization and to be able to adopt newer forms and structures of this is going to be the most important activity as far as technology modernization, as well as business modernization, as well as workforce modernization is concerned? Bilal.
Yeah, absolutely, Arjun. It is the need of the hour. Uh, I think every organization, whether it is from any industry, they have to think in that direction now. As Rajat mentioned, rightly mentioned, like you have to allow the employee, when you have to provide the right set of tools, or I'll say end to end, to perform end to end activities in that workstation. And it can be and then not it should not limit to the fixed assets. As I mentioned, I have been stressing on apps. So whether it's employee or customer or any associated partners, you
Indeed.
have to have that diversity in your workstations.
Uh,
Yeah, and the most
that,
important is you have to provide the right set of tools. As Vivek mentioned, I would again focus on that point. Data is very, 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 very important. Data science plays a very important role in every organization, every function. And if you provide the right set of data with the predictive models nowadays, to your employees, so it will definitely have the focused approach to in whichever industry you are having or working.
that's very interesting because, in conclusion, Vivekanand Manjari, you've heard industry speak and you've heard industry articulate in such supreme fashion not just the challenges but also the opportunities that lie ahead. And therefore, it is perhaps my mandate to ask you and seek your view on one important thing. If you look at industry today and how it's rapidly evolving into unimagined or perhaps reimagined realities in the future, what are the big bets that Dell Technologies, along with the overall ecosystem partnership that you have, you're taking from the centrality of the workstation, the endpoint device, as you call it, to be able to help industry fashion significantly different positive outcomes? Vivekanand Manjari.
Sure. I think there are, I think, two or three important things when we look into the future. One, as Dell Technologies, we've always, embraced flexibility in the options we provide. We started with, offering customized PCs when nobody else was doing it. You ship what you want from the factory. So keeping that, kind of philosophy and principle in mind, what we predict is we will continue to offer uh, technology solutions that avoid lock-ins, which means irrespective of what your underlying choices on software, be it operating system for the PCs or be it, your hypervisors for the data center, whatever be it, we will continue to give you the right choices so that, you are able to pick and choose the best technology that is available. And hence some of the design choices that we make in our roadmaps are also to provide that flexibility, right? And be it workstations in terms of them being flexible, scalable, all of that will continue, and we will continue to innovate within those boundaries. That's number one. The second piece, which is very important, is the future. Like, all the panelists, eminent panelists you called out, is all about how do you democratize data access and ensure that the device or whatever be it, we don't know in future what form the device will be, but whatever is that compute power which is available at the endpoint is the right productivity device, so that the data, the power that is with the data, can be harnessed to take the right products and solutions and get real-time feedback from customers and markets to bring newer products, right? So that is a tenet which we strongly believe in. So the future is going to be in how we bring devices to the market, help you harness the power of data, so that you will see multiple innovations on that front. And just as an example, we today offer, AI ML we have a data science workstation which was co-developed with NVIDIA, where you already have factory installed software to accelerate GPU performance so that the customer doesn't have to spend that much time. So take customer feedback and ensure that we continue to innovate on that dimension so that, data, the power of data can always be harnessed at the endpoint. And the last one, which everybody continue to talk about, is the endpoint. While it is going to be the productivity driver, is also a point where security of data becomes paramount. So you will continue to see us, bring to market devices where security is inbuilt, be it at a hardware level, above, below the OS. We have been innovating there. That will continue going forward, right? So I think these three things you will see from Dell Technologies and in Workstations specifically.
Fantastic.
In the future.
Fantastic, gentlemen. But that is pretty much what we have time for in this segment, gentlemen. Rajat, Bilal, Vivek, delightful having had this conversation with you. I think we've established quite a few very, very interesting nuances for this wonderful audience to take back. Gentlemen, thank you for your time today. We are deeply, deeply delighted with this.
Pleasure, Arjun. Good to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Rajat. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And ladies and
Thank you.
gentlemen, your host Arjun Vishwanathan, was in conversation on the whole concept of infrastructure modernization from the perspective of workstations. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
Thank you very much, Bilal. Thank you, Rajat. Thank you very much, Vivekanand and Arjun. That was an engaging and thought provoking discussion. With that, we now move forward to the next session, the Innovation Diaries. It is widely accepted that innovation is a primary source of competitive advantage for companies in essentially all industries and environments. It drives efficiency, productivity, and differentiation to fulfill a higher variety of needs. Industry today needs a productive boost from innovation and new frontier technologies to support growth. How are technology innovators helping companies introduce new ways of working with large number of employees and the goal of producing a step change in sustainable boost in business results? How will workstations help organizations navigate complex journeys to advance productivity and increase efficiencies? Let's hear from Mr. Suhas Pingad, Brand Manager, Precision at Dell Technologies. Joining the conversation, we have Mr. Suresh Peranjari, who is the Partner Technical Manager at PTC. And moderating the conversation, we have Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategy. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I'm going to be in conversation in this coming segment with two very, very eminent folks from within industry, folks with immense years of experience and who are equally neck deep in the crafting of technology to assist industry towards realizing incremental outcomes and value orientation. Please put your hands together to welcome Suhas Pingat, Product Evangelist at Dell Technologies. Suhas, welcome, sir. Delighted you could join us.
Thank you, Arjun. Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure being with you now. Hope you're doing well.
Absolutely, sir. And Suresh Peranjari, Partner Technical Manager, PTC. Suresh, welcome. Delighted that you could join us today. We know you've got a busy schedule.
Thank you very much, Arjun. Thank you, Suhas. It's a pleasure to be in this company.
Gentlemen, I'm going to directly jump into it, Suhas, with your permission, if I could come to you. If the last 15 months have given us immense lessons, how do you see industry being able to pick on those lessons to drive a future journey or a trajectory as far as the employee, the remote employee, and the decomposed workspace when they come together? How do you see industry being able to fashion newer trajectories around the whole concepts of collaboration, employee experience, and innovation?
Okay, that's quite vast if you ask me, Arjun. But let me see how I can answer that. 15 months and how many more months of this kind of work is going to be, one is not very sure. But what has definitely happened is, as far as the business is concerned, and specifically I would like to talk about the product that I'm actually associated with, the business that I'm associated with. and that is essentially the design workstations, the workstations that is used by any organization to make a product and run the business. What has happened now is, as we progressed in the last 15 years, we've actually seen transformation happening because of the fact that employees are no more in a single roof, under a single roof. Employees are scattered. And today what has happened is employees are scattered and they're not probably part of one city. If I'm based in Bangalore, I can work remotely. I could probably be in any location across the country, right? Or for that matter, anywhere else, because I am now a remote worker. So that has got different challenges. One, of course, the challenge is of being connected with an employee or a group of employees for collaboration, because uh, the business that we are in, collaboration is very, very important and essential. So we've seen a lot of change in the way organizations are collaborating. One is, of course, the standard means of communication, which would be using video collaboration tools like what we are doing today right now, or collaboration through specialized software which is currently available, or maybe remote working. That's one thing which we've seen. We've seen a major shift happening in giving the employee the right tools at their disposal to make work faster. Uh, Earlier, what I would see is that, so when I would like to say here is that the mobile computing aspect has grown leaps and bounds, and it has affected every industry in any vertical, and it is going to affect the industry vertical, specifically manufacturing. And so as I speak, there are traditional manufacturing organizations who are now talking about giving their employees the right tool, the most powerful mobile workstation that they can do, right? Which was not thought to be, let's say, 2 years behind, things like that. So I feel that change is happening, and organizations are now realizing that, okay, we just did not give them a necessary notebook computer and expect them to work on an amazing 3D work. That's not going to happen. Right? So that is major shift. So the right set of tools at the disposal of the employee, because the employee is a key factor here. If you do not model, if you do not visualize, if you do not digitally prototype, your product is not going to be out, right? And this is any which way a competitive world. Just because the pandemic had hit, competition across different sectors is not reduced. It's in fact become more severe in certain cases, right? So that's where organizations will have to not only design their products faster, but also get the products in the market faster. So that is one thing that we've seen. So competitiveness is there. Collaboration has become important. The right set of tools is really becoming very, very important. Otherwise, organizations will see employee happiness in terms of work seriously going down. So these are the few things that I can think about, especially given this domain and this part. And as I say, normally security aspect is really, really, really important.
That's very interesting. Suresh, I'm going to bring that to you. So that's very finely articulated. And if I were to kind of boil that down, articulated the core fact that the centrality of the humble workstation or the mobile workstation, as we tend to call it, stands extremely and highly reaffirmed in the lives of employees and of obviously for enterprises also. But my question equally, Suresh, is as job roles, job tasks, responsibilities, and accountabilities change as we move into the future, a fairly well reimagined set of realities. How do you see the modernization and the transformation of the workstation by itself proving to be a critical pillar towards enterprise success?
Yes. So, what we have understood in this pandemic situation is that one cannot be complacent with one's own skill. It has to be really multidisciplinary skills. In this pandemic, for the past 1.5 years working from home, I would say I could achieve much more skills than what I would have if I was in the office. And because you are supposed to do multiple things in a different situation, and that has helped me and my company not to lose business so much as was predicted because of the pandemic. And the kind of solutions which PTC is churning out for the customer is all towards the objective of digital transformation and Industry 4.0. For that, even the much required performing solutions like CAD, CAM, CAE, which requires a lot of performance from workstations, and also need not be desktop, but it could be mobile workstations. And we've seen that partners like Dell have come up with these, I would say it would be a companion which you can carry along keep it anywhere and work. And then nowadays we are talking about performance. Like the millennium kids are impatient when things don't happen in seconds. We have also become very impatient. Designers want everything in real time. So those solutions which we have, which can offer to the customer in this process of digital transformation, which supports many of the emerging technologies, as well as things like real-time simulation, requires performance enhancing things. Earlier, we used to totally depend on the performance of CPU. Now we talk about solutions which depend on the performance through GPU. And I can say, and I can vouch for our solutions, which gives the product development companies the right solutions to get things in real time. And in this situation where we are all remotely connected to something, we are connected. We are in remote, but we are connected. Be it to a industry machines or be it to the people, because of remotely monitoring tools available, because of the capability of taking so much of data in, able to put it in the right context, do proper diagnosis, do proper analytics, and create customer friendly reports, we are able to gain a lot of insights in our business. And all thanks to the supporting hardwares, which is helping us. The demand is very much, but still, these, because we have technologies, both software and hardware, we are able to achieve all this. And companies who are early innovators of all these digital transformation technologies are not losing much of business. In fact, if you look at the year-over-year growth of such businesses, it is much impressive.
That's very interesting because, Suhas, if I could come to you, I wrote down a few things that Suresh so finely articulated. He spoke about the whole concept of performance and real time. Now, Suhas, therefore, it also begs the question, as organizations realign strategies towards more outcome-based operating and business models, how do you equally, given your spectrum of visibility, see the role of the workstation radically changing over the coming years?
Actually, the role of the workstation may or may not really change that much. What will really impact is the expectation of performance. Okay, it's. I mean, I do know for sure. If I were to say, let's say about 6 years, a decade back or so, I mean, the expectation of performance was not there because the technology was not so advanced. Today, when you look at it, if I were to probably talk about a mobile workstation delivering the power of a tower workstation, and the kind of technologies that Dell is doing and the kind of artificial intelligence tools that Dell is getting into making softwares optimizedly run, all that is changing drastically. So if you talk about what's going to really impact moving ahead and how the workstation will change, it is already seen a sea change in terms of the form factor from big, strong, uh, bulky workstations, which can have tons of storage and multiple processors, two processors, frankly, which still continue. It's not that they will not continue, but the mobile workstation has become increasingly powerful. And what is going to change is, see, what Suresh mentioned was absolutely right. The millennial generation, okay? And okay, so I may not be the right person in the screen to talk about millennials,
Well, I
but
don't think any of us are.
right.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say here is maybe we were, I wouldn't say we were being patient. Being patient is not the right word. That's how the generation is, right? And they would like something that in front of the screen experience is something which is very, very important. For us, either it was a black and white or a color.
Indeed.
Today, if it's a color, what is the level of color that I can get? Do I get 100% color? Do I get brighter screens? Do I get touch as an option? And all those things are becoming very, very important. So the front of the screen experience will see a drastic change. It's already seen a drastic change. The technologies are there. There are users who would like to use multiple monitors. Okay, and instead of using a standard notebook, they'll use two monitors. Maybe do some one workflow in one monitor and do the second workflow in second monitor. Work simultaneously because now the technology enables you to work faster. What was not possible earlier is made possible because of the fact that software that you're going to use is enabling that kind of work, which means, for example, if I'm designing any component or any small part, I can go ahead as a 3D modeler and can do analysis as well,
Indeed.
right? do that analysis, check if it is good or not. And if I want to make a photorealistic image to show it to some of my leaders, I can do it immediately and send it across to my leader who's probably sitting in Denmark or in Mumbai,
Indeed.
right? So that's collaboration which is happening. And the millennial generation is actually adaptable. They adapt to this very quickly. And the fact is that they're going to expect much, much more in the next couple of years to come. So in a way, it's a challenge to see how the so-called humble workstation, which has now become the most powerful workstation at the desk, and then see how it moves ahead, because it's going to be interesting.
It is indeed, because Suresh, then that brings me to a very important question. And Suhas spoke about collaboration. In your collaboration with Dell Technologies, and of course, the larger ecosystem, on behalf of this audience, I must ask you, what is the innovation in terms of whether it's form, feature, softwares, integration, can industry expect today for them to be able to adapt to as well as adopt newer working models and perhaps absorb the digital workforce, the gig economy in much better methods than they have been able to traditionally do?
Yeah, I have plenty of ideas actually. I don't know whether it is already been said in the forum where Dell has to take care of. See, one thing what I've seen is it has helped us with asynchronous operation, like what Suhas mentioned, doing multiple tasks at a time. Do one thing and simultaneously do certain other things along with. So that is something which is which is demanding. Second thing is, if this pandemic is going to continue, of course, people like me, we all always have to be in front of computers, whether it is helping customers, whether it is offline, online, whatever it is. So you also have to take care of your health. So we need to have, maybe Suhas was mentioning about artificial intelligence. Can these machines be intelligent enough to understand the lighting conditions of the room? Like I saw one setting here that after certain particular time, the monitor light can be reduced to a very, less brightness, but that was a manual setting. Can it become intelligent on its own? Can it suggest even the sound clarity, the video clarity, all these things have to be improved. I still feel that a lot of scope for improving that. When I compare to an iPhone, I don't see that the camera quality is as good as, or does it really focus onto the audience when we speak. So in fact, an earlier recording, instead of doing from this, I was of the impression that this camera is the best. Of course, it is the best compared to any other mobile workstations. But I found that the iPhone camera is best. And my son told me, because it focuses on automatically. Why don't we have such technology in mobile workstations? In fact, when I do, the puja, this is the workstation which I keep first and do the puja. This is my bread and butter. So there are a lot of things which I expect this workstation to do, help me in making my work environment stress-free, adapting to the situation for long hours. Of course, also helping me to concentrate on these advanced technologies, innovative ways for helping customers who are trying to adopt to Industry 4.0, that autonomous stage, which is the final maturity index of Industry 4.0, being autonomous. When we're trying to achieve those kind of things, we definitely depend on the hardware and the software to support along with that.
That's finely articulated, really, because I do have a view on the clock, gentlemen, and I do know that you've got hard schedules ahead. So, Has, in conclusion, if I may be allowed to ask you, or rather put out a statement there, is that the whole concept of resurgence and revival rests perhaps in the ability for organizations to modernize at a very fundamental level. And one of the pillars to that is equally the infrastructure modernization or the modernization of the device, which is really the bread and butter for most employees who are working. In that kind of a scenario, Suhas, what is your essential guidance on how you would advise organizations to approach this whole journey of employee experience, balancing employee experience with enterprise expectations, being able to collaborate and innovate more, and deliver incremental outcomes? If all of that were to rest on this humble workstation, as we were to say, what is your advice on how organizations should even approach this journey?
Yes, Arjun. So before I comment on that, I would like to mention it to Suresh. All what he wanted is already there in the workstation. So we should be able to connect separately, and there are a lot of good stuff which is happening. Automatic ways of display changes, low blue light models, stuff like that. charging. In fact, we will now shortly have certain technologies. If you move, the camera moves. Okay, so that's a kind of interesting stuff we're going to get in, right? So the journey is obviously there. So coming back to you, Arjun, this is what I wanted to know: is that the future, of course, is going to be a hybrid model. I think now large organizations have come to realize, okay, fine, now we've done remote. I think now we can do either 100% remote or we could do hybrid and stuff like that. The importance of employee empathy is very, very critical here. Okay. When I say employee empathy, it also means work-life balance, which is, of course, bases the employee and the productivity that the employee generates. The health aspect is very, very important. So imagine you're going to be sitting in front of the screen, let's say a mobile workstation, and you're going to be working, let's say, 8 hours on a very complex assembly design. And at the end of the day, you're going to be really, really, really gone. So how is it that the screens are adopted, right? Everybody talks about brightness in the screens, but how good the technology is to take care of the health of the user's eyes, right? So that is something which is very interesting, and that is work already in progress. And in fact, today display panels that we have do take care of these important elements. So that's fundamentally there. I think the workstation, essentially, just because it is powerful, doesn't mean that it has to be utilized 24/7, because the employee is not going to be working 24/7. So that's where it is important to create that differentiation for an organization. Organizations will now have to invest upfront slightly more than they were earlier investing, right? A standard panel, the investment in a good, healthy panel would be at least 15, 20% more. I'm just giving a rough estimate. So the investment that goes into these categories of units or workstation tools will obviously grow, because you're going to give more power. More power, more flexibility, more reliability, all that will actually come at a certain price. So which means you will have to actually look at not the initial investment, but the investment over a period of 3 years, right? And what is the productivity now? Because I'm sure with this right technology tool, the productivity level of the modeler or the engineer or the designer will increase, because you're going to get work done faster, which means you will have more time to develop, think, and design new projects, right? So that is what is going to change. And that is obviously changing. So organizations will have to take this into mind, because at the end of the day, unless and until your employee is ready to give you that fantastic design, which is super, super, super efficient, let's say, in all aspects, you're not going to get a product which is going to be very effective in the market.
Couldn't agree more. Clearly, the articulation being invest today to save tomorrow. But Suresh, I just come to you with one rapid fire question, just one. The most radical wish list, if you could have it, name 2 things that you'd like in the next workstation that you could. It could be anything. So ours is listening anyways.
I say to the workstation, it does for me.
So now that's going to be a difficult one to pull off, but
it may not be difficult, because see, I'll tell you, Suresh, if that happens, then I think we're going to see a lot of OTT content being visualized by seen by a lot of our people, right? Okay, I say, okay, do all these practices, put in the element, do all that. So, which means you're going to have an intelligent voice assistant inbuilt. So, if your software helps it, then for sure we will ensure that the hardware helps it as well.
What I mean is, Suhas, is I may do my basic core activities the way I do it with better.
Right.
So many side activities which happens. An email comes up, a message pops up. I have to go there and open it. If I say, okay, tell me what's it regarding? Is it important? No, I don't go, and I concentrate on my core business. So something.
Yes. Yeah, I got it. So Suresh, I think a lot of AI-based workflows are going to be part of whatever design tools are there, obviously, and the hardware that you're going to use. It's going to be really ensuring that work becomes very flexible, and you focus on what you want to do and leave the rest to the machines to do blindly. Don't leave everything to the machine.
Exactly. Because we are in our technology.
Right.
We are bringing in our AI-driven design technology, where it will be, you say something and it does it for you.
Yeah, that's been one of my fantasies. Once before I finally stop working, I want to be able to make a presentation the way Iron Man does his stuff. I just want to be doing all that, but I guess I'm
sure. So that's something which is going to happen. Give and take another 1 year or 2 years max. I think you're going to get those technologies, right? I mean, it's all about blowing up that model outside. And
that's pretty much about it. But
right, it's
gentlemen,
possible.
thank you. This has been a fascinating conversation. It's been a lot of fun personally for me. And I'm sure the audience stands much the better for having heard us in dialogue, especially the two of you. Suhas, Suresh, thank you so much. We're privileged to have you join us today. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Arjun.
much.
Thank you, Suresh.
My
Thanks a
pleasure.
lot.
Thank you, Suhas. Thank you, Arjun.
And for the audience, that was for in this segment. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment in just a minute.
Thank you very much, Suresh and Arjun. That was indeed an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we now move forward to our next session, which is the CIO diaries. The need of the hour clearly is for high-powered and reliable workstations that will allow the largely digital workforce to collaborate and innovate unhindered. This would the experience, reliability, and security that truly define the digital economy. Let's take a sneak into the CIO diaries to understand what's high on their list of priorities. To take us through this session, we have with us Mr. Sanjay Muralwar, Senior GM IT, Zydus Cadla, Mr. Venkatesh Natarajan, CDO, Ashok Leyland, Mr. Prajit Nair, Director Sales, End User Computing, VMware India. And moderating the session, we have with us Mr. Barun P. Lala, Advisor, Strategy. Over to you, Barun.
So I would take you through this panel discussion. So we have three guest speakers here. We have Prajit Nair. Prajit is Senior Director, VMware. We have Venkatesh Natarajan, Chief Digital Officer, Ashok Leyland, and Mr. Sanjay Muralwar, Senior General Manager, IT, Zydus Cadla. Welcome to all of you. When coming to you, okay, we hear a lot of times on future of workforce. Okay, how do you see it happening in your industry?
So the automotive industry, Barun, has been running for about 110 plus years on fossil fuel. So there are two kind of there are two kind of trends, one kind of impacting the other. The one is the move towards green energy. So today we hear of zero net carbon and so on. And you know that shift towards kind of other forms of energy to as a prime mover to drive the automobile. And I would say the IC engines, petrol and diesel engines, probably are in the slog overs at this point in time, the last mile. So that's one set of trends. And that's kind of also kind of driving another set of trends which are driven by technology, the digital technologies, and you call it as CASE today: connected, autonomous, shared, and electric, right? And here the bedrock of all this, or the core central element in all this, is data. And data is, you can call it as a new powerhouse or whatever it is. We truly have realized that it's all going to be data in the automotive industry moving forward. So much so, I would say the shift is from the paradigm shift from horsepower to computational power. And that is what is the shift what we are seeing. Now, because of these changes, which are very dramatically happening at a very rapid pace, right? I would, divide these whole changes and the trends into three categories in terms of the work trends, right? And I would put it under people, process, and technology. If you look at people, the kind of work trends as I see moving forward, and that's predominantly kind of powered by or caused by, triggered by the COVID, is an empathy-driven workplace, right? So you're going to see in organizations, whatever is going to be designed, whether you're designing a product, you're designing a process, you're designing a service, right? It's all going to be empathy-driven. You're going to have that end customer, end user, putting him in the center point, and then viewing the entire thing and then saying, building your product or service. So that's going to be more and more dominant in the way work is going to be conducted. The other is it's going to be more and more a health-oriented workplace, right? I feel now you would have more and more of devices, wearables, right, which can track a lot of things related to an employee, not only his movement, but his health parameters also.
and then capturing all that live data, because organizations have now become very conscious of the fact that you need to have a healthy organization. A healthy organization is having people who are very healthy. So tracking their health and all that is of paramount importance, and you're going to see a lot of this happening. So, and then the third one related to people is a hybrid workplace. To what extent organizations are going to adopt the work from home and then work from office, and in what ratios and percentages remains to be seen. I still feel the manufacturing industry will go back, to a work from office, and then they will come back, recover, and then adopt the work from home. But we will have to see. You have the IT industry, many of the organizations have already declared that they would go on a work from home and so on. That remains to be really seen to what extent. Learning would be a continuous process, and we have seen that happening. A lot of learning is happening, and this was really continue moving forward, virtual learning and so on. From a process perspective, organizations in their move to become more lean and agile, there would be a lot more focus on process automation, so that you have to be lean to run faster, and more importantly to change direction. So there would be a lot of focus on automating processes and so on, and that's where all your AI, RPA and all that would kick in. More and more of data analytics, and I think every one in the organization has to be conscious of the power of data, and then we are driving that in our own organization, part of a data-driven organization, to use the power of data in all facets of our business operations would be a major trend. And lastly, from a technology trend, I think IoT is here to stay. It is all pervasive. Everything is becoming smart, from smart tools. If you visit our shop floor, you'll find a lot of machines, you find a lot of equipment, you find a lot of tools. Even torque wrenches are also with IoT sensors capturing a lot of data. You're going to see more and more of that moving forward. And then with all that, security is becoming a major concern, because in the last 1 year, the kind of attacks what we have seen, cyber security, and from an automotive industry, because specifically you asked for it, automotive digital security, because now there's more and more of data being flashed into the vehicles. Today, we can, the behavior of the engine, for example, is determined by the data. And today we are able to flash that data over the air, right? So you need to ensure that security on an end-to-end basis in this whole kind of a chain. And you're going, lastly, technology-driven business models. And the classic example, as I said, is we have floated a company for mobility as a service, right? And that's going to be a heavily kind of a tech-driven kind of an organization. So more and more of technology would be embedded in every facet of all the organizations moving forward. So these are, and that would call for a lot of changes in the culture, in the digital dexterity, in the capability of the employees to be embracing technology and using and adopting technology moving forward. So these are some of the things which I see as the changes that you're going to see in the work trends you're going to see going forward.
I think we and you very well captured the triangle, which we say, people, process, and technology. And you gave classic examples as to how they are going to impact, and how empathy, smart devices are going to drive the health of the employees, focus on technology, automation of the processes, big data analytics, and stuff like that. I think it's it's very exciting times ahead, and mobility as a service. I think I will look forward to that always. Coming back to you, Sanjay. In the pharma industry, during the pandemic times, what are the kind of business challenges you faced? If you can just highlight top 3 of them.
So first and foremost was that moment the pandemic was in place and a lockdown was declared. So the most important thing was that making systems available to the users who were work from home, making applications available to the users for work from home, and ensuring that quickly we have something with us which reports the health of every employee visiting the plant. So this was the first biggest challenge. Okay, we had to immediately react, create or have a rollout. I nicely remember 21st March 20 was the day when lockdown was declared. So almost by 18th of March, we had a complete business continuity plan available with us, and successfully rolled out the business continuity plan for for the office work users and also the manufacturing users. And we knew that health reporting of every employee would be the most critical thing for employees reporting to the office. And quickly we were there with a mobile app of capturing health status of every employee going to the plant, and then a proper analytics on that of how a reaction has to take place in case if anything adverse is reported. So that were the two key things. Then the second thing was executive reporting, senior executive reporting. We had a very traditional way of reporting from the point of view of using generic reports from the ERP systems and other systems. There was a quick turnaround ensuring that these reports were then converted into good analytic reports, and they were then immediately flashed on emails to these senior executives. This was also a very quick turnaround which was to be done and was done quickly. And the other biggest challenge was, so all of us know that three major verticals of any pharma industry is the field force, the relationship between the field force and the company, then the relationship between the field force and the doctors, and the third one is the relationship between the doctors and the patients. So how we keep this interaction or collaboration on all the three things, on all the three verticals seamless during this period. Now, that was one of the key challenge which actually all the pharma industry faced, entire pharma industry faced. And quickly there was a turnaround. I think within 2 months or 3 months, every pharma industry had devised methodologies and were in place for ensuring that all the three verticals of the pharma industry perform seamlessly, and collaborations happened at all the levels in all the interventions. Wherever there were manual interventions, those were digitized to ensure that there were seamless collaborations happening in all the three relationships and all the three verticals. These three were, I think, the major challenges which we faced, and rather every pharma industry would have faced.
So I think, as you said, I think, if I have to take away from your discussion is business continuity was of paramount importance when people started working from home, and to keep the pharma ecosystem running, lock, stock and barrel. Okay. So that is the key priority. Coming back to you, Prajit. Prajit, you are seeing digital transformation in the customer landscape. We have heard from Sanjay as well as from VN what is happening in the automotive and the pharma industry. So tell us something about the innovation, what is happening along the collaboration tools on the workstation platforms. What is VMware doing on that?
Yeah, great. So if you look at it, I think I would take Mr. Natarajan's statement that he's truly going to build mobility as a service, truly going to service customers over the air. See, some of these are the buzzwords of the next wave of industry and what industries are trying to do. Now, look at the situation over here. On one side, we have transformations going on at an application. People are wanting to transform their application, adopting cloud, going to increase agility, making business continuity available. Ultimately, all these applications needs to be consumed in some form or the other on some device. That device can be a workstation, can be a mobile device, can be a tablet, can be a PC, can be a laptop, MacBook, different kinds of it. There is a plethora of device, in fact, even IoT device for that matter. Now, look at the situation. I mean, so far, this is how every organization has grown. Now, on one side, we have done this lot of transformation on an application. We are truly leveraging cloud. We are building applications, raising it so that employees can adopt it faster. But we still have age-old traditional tools to manage these systems. And because of that, what is happening is, over a period of years, we have built silos of technology in our organization, because that was a need with which we evolved. That is how we grew with the organization. So even within the organizations, you will find an IT infra team, a security team, a networking team, a different set of teams managing maybe even one application for that matter. So for example, if we talk about situation, what is happening is your earlier tools, which were meant to harden your systems, your workstations, your any devices which are being used, within your so-called perimeter of your organizations were very hardened to protect it. Everything was connected to the AD. You would have built your firewall, IDS, IPS, procedures, security, all very tightly integrated to protect that domain. But look at the scenario now. I mean, what was essentially built in such a way that 80 to 90% of your assets would be within your control and possibly about 10% outside is today the other way around, where we have 80% of the devices from outside and maybe 10 to 20% inside. And of course, depending on the organizations like a manufacturing, I agree with Mr. Narayan, where possibly many of those are still on-prem. They would have to come to, especially because of plants and production setup, they would still need to come to that. But still, the shift has happened over there. Now, can we depend on those existing tools which were there since earlier year to manage the set of devices? Because if we are not able to rather not get a visibility to who is accessing their devices in which form, how are we even going to manage it? So for example, if the devices, when they're in your domain, within your corporate domain, within your perimeter, you have full visibility. What all applications are there, what controls are there, whether the systems are patched, not patched, how the user is connecting, everything you can manage it. But when these devices are now outside, first, you don't get a true visibility. The main challenge is that every organization has gone through these three phases. What was these three phases? Broadly speaking, one is react, which happened immediately after the pandemic. Oh, I need to do business continuity. So let me give VPNs or do something to at least get business continuity. That was react. Then came respond, where people said that, okay, my business continuity is already done. But is it right? How long should I build it for? Will it last 6 months? Will it last 1 year? I really don't know. So can I look at some solutions which could last a bit longer? And possibly then the third phase came of rethink, where truly people started thinking that how can I truly leverage the situation and build myself for the next phase? And are these the right tools that I'm investing? Like people, every organization you go to, they will all say that we have bought VPNs in tons. The question mark is, we also know the data report that more than 2000% increase in attacks purely on VPN, because they know that the entire organization is now connected to VPN, and VPN is the only way business continuity is delivered. People working from home, whenever they are connected to VPN, the systems get patched. When they are not connected to the VPN, it is not being patched because they have a traditional infrastructure. They do not have an over-the-air solution like what we are truly delivering to our consumer. And that's where VMware innovated with truly the anywhere workspace story, where we are going to drive to customers and tell them that irrespective wherever you work, whether you work in office, whether you work from home, whether you work from plant, we are offering you a true platform, a cloud-ready platform, which is not necessarily tied to your domain. And we can track your assets, whether they are working from office, whether they're working from home, whether they're going to connect from a hotel, which Wi-Fi network they're coming from, which location they are coming from, what is the device posture, and truly build a more proactive, so-called, secure zero trust architecture, as it is known in the security fraternity, to deliver access control, applications and data available to the right user at any time. If it's coming to workstation, even virtualizing workstation and integrating it with facial biometric. Normally, we only have a thumb biometric, but some organizations say that no, security for me is beyond that, and I want to ensure that the user productivity is also monitored. And they want to integrate even a facial biometric with workstation virtualization. And they're saying that, can you have a solution which can monitor the face and also look at what's the number of hours they are sitting, and if I get up and walk out, or if I'm already logged in and somebody else comes and sits in my place and start working, it should shut down. Those kind of advanced features were also needed on the workstation virtualization. And VMware is truly offering all of these solutions, be it workstation virtualization for the plants, manufacturing, whether it is graphics virtualization, and this is where the partnership with Dell truly comes into the forefront, because Dell offers the entire platform, be it the HCI platform that you need, be it the virtualization platform you need, or be it the devices on which you are going to consume all these applications. So truly an end-to-end transformation that can be made available to the customer. And we also offer it on a physical devices, moving away from the traditional siloed tools that you've been using for years.
So, VN, my next question is directly related to your workstation environment. Having handled Ashok Leyland as an account, I have seen that you do a lot of CAD CAM, computer aided engineering for your automotive design and stuff like that on the workstation platform. So when this, pandemic happened, how do you circumvent this problem?
Varun, auto industry all over globally and in India, I think we should recognize the fact that it has got a very large engineering IT footprint, right? So most of the time, the entire focus of whatever we talk on is all on your business applications and platforms related to that. It could be your ERP platforms, your CRM platforms, or SRM, whatever it is, all those, or your digital platforms and so on.
Absolutely.
Right? But while if that is considered to be a Pacific Ocean, in the automotive industry, the engineering IT platforms are the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Ocean is slightly smaller than the Pacific Ocean, but not very small also. That is also big. Atlantic Ocean is also big. So when the pandemic hit us, right, and Prajit was right in saying, and especially in the engineering IT area, the computing model is predominantly in the engineering area. It is predominantly on-prem and it is not cloud. It's only nowadays that you have started really hearing of cloud, and you have certain vendors who are offering their CAD services, PLM services, and so on a cloud model. I'm not quite sure whether it's on a SaaS model, but still. So when the COVID hit us, it was much easier for us to transition our regular users who use our SAP, your ERP and all that, because they were anyway using remotely through the VPN access. But to get the engineering folks were not using that because they were working on workstations and not the normal laptops and desktops. And workstations come with those, those special configurations of RAM size, your processors, your the pixels, also your resolution, high definition resolution, all that put together. So the challenge was, how do you replicate the kind of something similar kind of an experience as working in an office in their house, and ensuring even security also. So initially, when we said lock, stock and barrel, 600 in the month of April, when the lockdown was announced on from 25th of March last year, lock, stock and barrel, we had to shift about 600 engineers onto a work from home model. So they were accessing, we enabled that through a RDC, that is a remote desktop connection. And then they were using, but there were some complaints on performance. So we parallelly increased the bandwidth also, our gateway internet gateway bandwidth we increased at our tech center. And then we started looking at the performance, and then felt what else needs to be done at that point in time. Then we were talking to the OEM, the majority of our workstation supplied by that OEM, we spoke to him, and then worked out a kind of a low cost VDI kind of a facility, right? And then installed that, and then we found that the performance significantly improved, right? And also ensure that the security, whatever was there in terms of security posture, which was there in the office, was also replicated in the thing, that you can't print and you can't forward, blah, 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 and all that, because our CAD models and all that are IPs for us. So we ensure that also. We also ensured remote testing also, because there are a lot of things which are going on, testing and simulation. All that was also now, kind of brought to the work from home kind of a model. We enabled that, right? And then finally, of course, the change I would really now see moving forward is the cloud adoption. So we have been kind of predominantly engineering CAD and all that is on the on-prem model. So now you're seeing more and more of the cloud, whereas on the other areas, we are fully on the cloud, big data platforms and whatnot. But on the engineering IT applications that move to the cloud is something I think we will have to start evaluating, because the constraints in terms of bandwidth, because the CAD models are very, very heavy, right?
Absolutely.
You need very, very high bandwidth. So there are several people, hundreds of people who are working parallelly. So that needs to be evaluated, and that's the change which we foresee moving forward. So yes, it was a very, very successful migration, and it was a kind of several lessons learned, I would say, in enabling this, but we ultimately came out successful.
Yeah, I think, having handled the automotive vertical, I'll be very excited to see the transition of engineering IT onto the cloud model.
Yeah.
So I look forward to it, as you go about in this transition journey. Coming back to you, Sanjay, your industry is very unique. It has got some clinical trials, which has got very long cycles. You have counterfeit as a big challenge, in our industry. So from that perspective of the business challenges for the pharma industry, how important is big data and how important it is as part of your IT strategy?
So see, let us understand one thing. As I told you before the pandemic, okay, the pharma industry was having a sort of adoption curve, okay, which was very specific to the industry. The pandemic has definitely escalated or expedited the adoption of technology within the industry, and it is across. So as technology is getting adopted, data is getting collected, and this data uh, is going to get into the category of big data, where insights would be achieved from various algorithms. Let us understand one thing. There were use cases. Okay, it is not that there were no use cases, but the Indian pharma industry, there were very few cases of big data analytics to be used. Okay, internationally, the pharma industry was using that. Because again, it is very conservative, and taking this big data outside the premise was one of the biggest questions, okay, within the industry. And so you were not finding too many use cases for big data analytics, or at least what I know about. But now, since it is becoming inevitable to incorporate technology in practically all major processes of pharma industry, like a manufacturing, like a clinical trial. So I would like to relate more on the manufacturing process, where if you see in any given formulation manufacturing process, you would have 4 key milestones, and in these 4 key milestones, you will have at least 700-800 lots to be filled up to constitute a batch manufacturing record. Now, almost suddenly, this need across the industry, where you implement some automation, where these logbooks are automated. Okay, very few organizations were previously talking about MES as an application, manufacturing execution systems as an application, to be actually implemented across all the processes of, or all the manufacturing processes across industry. Right. So now that has become inevitable, and people have started using or considering technology to capture these logbooks in an automated manner. Okay. Now, moment you have this data on an technology or in an application, you would definitely be able to use it on a big data lake or a data lake and extract required analytics out of that and use that to derive a golden batch. Okay, so this definitely is going to happen, and yes, over a period of next 5 years, you will see many use cases of big data analytics in the pharma industry also, rather in the Indian pharma industry also.
I think taking a clue from what Sanjay said, and we heard VN also, Prajit, my final question for the day, from the innovation point of view, tell us a couple of things which is still at the design stage, which can be exciting for the customers going forward.
So I would like to start somewhere from where I left last time, that VPN was a savior to many organizations because it gave them business continuity as an answer. But is that enough? Now organizations are looking at possibly no, because of the amount of ransomware attack, the kind of security exposure VPNs are giving to the endpoint. Because what is happening is the endpoints are all outside. And as long as they are connected on the VPN, they are able to update it, send applications around it. But it's not always the case. People might connect to your VPN maybe once in a week, maybe twice a week or 3 days a week, but not 24/7 round the clock is connected. So at any given point in time, that visibility is not available for the IT administrator and going. Second aspect of it is the experience. What is the true experience? Because you have a VPN gateway which is built up now, and people are all coming, whether you have. So if you look at the corporate, there are a mix of applications. One is an in-house application, your corporate applications, your client server applications. And second are the cloud-based applications like your Office 365, like your Workdays, like your Salesforce, or completely cloud-based application. Because of the VPN, people working from home have to come through that VPN gateway, work internally, and if they have to go to Office 365, again go from that gateway back to the cloud. That's something which is called as a classic hairpin. So two issues. One, the security itself, because VPN exposes that endpoint and connects it to your data center. And number two, because of the thin gateway, there is a hairpin issue because of traffic of the cloud applications which you have also needs to come to your data center and then go to the cloud. And to solve both of this solution is what we have come up with the modern management application, or what we call the unified endpoint management. What we do is here we are planning to integrate this with a secure platform, which is Carbon Black, which is our security platform for next generation antivirus and EDR. And we are also having a partnership or so-called consortium of all the security vendors, which VMware is branding as a trust network, so that I get all the common vulnerability database from a Checkpoint, from a Palo Alto, from a Trend Micro, all different vendors. And because of that common vulnerability database and the integration which I have with my UEM, which is a unified endpoint management, today I have visibility to all the endpoints when they are even outside, whether they connect on the VPN or they're not connect to the VPN. Because my platform is over the cloud, I can connect to this device and I will get asset details, the user details, the application details, the network details, the asset detail. And based on the common vulnerability information which I'm getting with my trust network, I'm able to build a more proactive zero trust architecture and tell these devices and build conditional access policies, which says that, okay, if a particular user is connecting, let's say from his laptop, and he's trying to access one corporate application, the user is authenticated, great. He is going to access a corporate internal application, which is critical. Do I need to trigger a multi-factor authentication automatically? And the answer is yes. Then I have a built-in multi-factor authentication built into my system solution itself. So he authenticates it, and then it will further check which network is he coming from. Is he coming from an authorized network which has been authorized by the organization? If no, then I can deny or allow or even say restrictive access, which says that maybe you can only read but not write, or vice versa. So I can build conditional policies based on the contextual experiences that users bring in. And this is enhancing the complete security and more proactive nature, and doing away with the only dependence on VPN, which people are doing. What is truly delivering to the customer is that they can truly now think of consolidating the number of IT tools they have been using. For example, customers have been using for years the patch management solution like SCCM, BigFix, Trainium, whatever. They have been building set of solutions. They are truly buying third-party solutions like RSA for multi-factor authentication. They are buying third-party solutions for single sign-on, a true single sign-on which delivers capability across cloud native, intranet, mobile, all set of applications, a true single sign-on. What about BitLocker management? Windows 10 is what is truly delivering BitLocker management. How can I truly seamless this? And the asset management details. I'm building all these components together along with the security of the next generation AV and EDR capability. I am able to bring down cost for the customer by at least 30 to 40% on their current OpEx that they're doing. And this is one of the biggest platform that customers are really excited that, no, this is a great modern platform which helps me retire my existing solutions in phase-wise manner as and when I need to retire, and gives me a more modern view into how can I manage each of the devices over the air rather than depending only on domain join machines. Like today, customers are coming back and say that I have only intranet apps or web-based application to do. Why should I even buy Windows-based platform? I want to only buy Chromebooks, or I want to buy a MacBook, depending on my experience that I want to do that. Now, this kind of a change that organizations are asking is a lot more cost saving for them, because they are able to bring down the cost of Windows licenses, which possibly they don't need on those endpoints. And it's just a Chromebook, they need to access those applications and get it. And they want a management which can provision the Google Chromebooks, manage it over the air. So this platform is able to deliver all those capabilities and retire the VPNs and give them more per app based connectivity or a web-based connectivity securely with encryption, rather than connecting the entire device into managing this. And to build further enhancements into it, I have what is called as the SASE framework. This is what Gartner and the others are recommending for the future, that how can I consolidate security tools as well? Not just the management tools, IT management, but also the security tools. Security tools like cloud web access security, secure web access, CASB solutions, Zscaler integrations. All of that solutions I'm ready to deliver now over the cloud under my SASE framework. So, VMware, which was traditionally known as an infrastructure vendor, as a cloud vendor, as a VDI and an endpoint management vendor, is also putting a great foot forward as a security vendor, driving these security postures more intrinsically rather than an afterthought, which organizations are doing. And these are some of the great innovations which are adding into the platform now.
I think, we had a great conversation. Thanks, VN. Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks, Prajit, for coming together. I think we got perspective from the automotive industry, the pharma industry, and we got insights from the OEM, VMware. Really thankful, and it was a pleasure to coordinate this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure interacting with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Indeed, an exciting session. Thank you very much, Sanjay, Venkatesh, Prajit, and Borun. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we move forward to our next session, which is the plain speaking session. Through this session, we'll understand why workstation modernization is an important step towards business modernization and how it is critically driving employee experience. Let's hear it from Ms. Mala Bhatt, the Director, Software Engineering, Dell Technologies, who is in a conversation with Ms. Mithali Sharma, Corporate Head, Risk, Compliance and Information Security at SDG Software. Moderating the conversation, we have with us Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategy. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, your host. And I'm going to be in discussion with two very, very eminent ladies today. Powerhouses in their own might, as far as technology is concerned, to talk about and examine pressing matters of how, as organizations increasingly move towards and strive towards coping with a dynamically changed environment, the needs of enterprise employees are also undergoing radical change. And the balance that must ensue demands a range of solutions from near hassle-free experiences with contextual authentication, providing streamlined processes, removal of the boundaries of time and space, and the ability for a largely digital workforce today that seeks to collaborate, innovate, and drive superior outcomes. And to talk to me, please put your hands together to welcome very, very warmly and in no specific order, Mithali Sharma, Head Risk, Compliance and Information Security at SDG Software. Mithali, welcome. We are privileged to have you with us.
Same here, Arjun.
And Mala Bhatt, Product Line Leader at Dell Technologies. Mala, welcome. Very grateful you could make time and thank you.
Thanks, Arjun. Great to be here.
Mithali, with your permission, I'm going to come to you and we've got a fascinating set of conversations ahead and I am looking forward to such supreme articulation that both of you I have known to bring to the table is the rise of the digital workforce today seems to be combining or converging with the decomposition equally of the physical workspace. So you've got a digital workforce at one end and the gig economy, and you've got a digital workspace which is really work from anywhere so long as you have an active workstation. How do you see the convergence of human capital and technology kind of fusing together to help organizations form the digital core?
So, I have been saying this before also in a lot of forums that digital transformation will be the key right now. How you bring that synergy between the digital world and the employee and how you mix and match it with the business objectives and ensure that, there is collaboration because we know that now, this remote working, this is going to stay here. So it is time when the organizations would need to accelerate their digital transformation big time. COVID in the last 18, 19 months, or let's say 2 years now, we have seen a lot of transition and transformation happening very rapidly. Like earlier, people who were thinking, should I move my infrastructure? Should I move my exchange? Now, suddenly, all of a sudden, last 6, 7 months, 1 year, everything has suddenly moved on. So everything has accelerated. And uh, in order to stay in the business, like they say, in order to stay in the business, you have to stay ahead. And to stay ahead, there is no other way than to go in for this digital transformation at a rapid speed. And to do that, just to bring that kind of synergy which you are talking about, I think a thorough risk assessment of your environment would be what would be needed at this point of time, because the kind of risk assessment that we did say a couple of years back is now legacy. No longer you can go ahead and say that, okay, these were my controls, these were my technical controls, these were my administrative controls. People are not going to the facility. What would you do with that administrative controls? What would you do with those access controls? So you have to think out of the box a little bit now. You have to think of more towards bringing cloud, bringing collaboration, introducing those things into your space and aligning that with business objectives, because the client objectives and everything remains the same, but the infrastructure and the environment changes completely. So now it will be a paradigm shift, so to say, and this is the time when there'll be a lot of changes in the way budgeting was done, in the way the tools and technologies were done, in the way infrastructure was done. So rather than focusing on buying servers for the organization, people would think on bringing high-end workstations and solutions like EDR or DLP, where they can do monitoring and automated monitoring, or maybe move on to the extent of having AI ML based tools implemented, rather than just restricting to certain things.
Because I think you just articulated something that's right up Mala's alley, really. Mala, we just heard a fascinating articulation on how organizations are processing change. And as they process change, because it's today a necessity, organizations are also looking ahead to the future towards, well, reimagined realities of sorts, an uncertain future of sorts, to be able to fashion strategy and operating models based on what is conducive to the business. Now, in that kind of a space, it's equally a mandate to ask you how, from Dell Technologies' perspective at Dell Digital, you're looking at bringing about a convergence of human capital and technology to help organizations create, well, what we tend to call a digital core, or the ability to think digitally native. How do you see that orchestration taking place? Mala Bhatt.
Thank you, Arjun. So I think when I look at it, right, from a transformation perspective, I always look at three big pillars: process, people, process, and technology. So and when we talk about a transformation, I think the transformation has to be start from the people, and then technology and process has to be get aligned to it. So when I talk about what's happening in Dell, from a transformation perspective, definitely we are moving into the complete product model adoption, where each one of us will be thinking more in terms of product outcomes rather than about just a checklist, tasks, activities, right? So that is the cultural change that is happening. From a technology perspective, because the business demand is changing and the business is expecting us to make a changes very, very rapidly, right? So the time to market is also equally important. So from a technology perspective, the change is that we are implementing or adopting a DevOps model in a way that any change that you make, it is getting into the production and be able to be there for user immediately, right?
That is actually true.
So that is the technology side change. From a process side, I think I would say from 10 years back itself, we have started our agile journey, and we have now accelerated into the something called XP, which is the extreme programming practices. And that is helping us to be paced with the technology and the business changes in the industry.
No, that's mighty interesting because, and I like what you brought out about the whole concept of accelerated programs that will help not just Dell within and internally, but also translate into industrial progress and to help better help organizations be able to cater to this better? Because Mitali, I want to bring that to you. As organizations today look ahead into the future and look at adopting the tenets of the future of work, one that is fairly loosely defined within its framework. My question to you really, Mitali, is how do you foresee organizations evolving to balance employee experience and employee expectations versus enterprise expectations?
So, a very interesting question, and I would say a slightly tricky one also to answer in a short time. I mean, we can go on talking about it
Indeed, so.
for a longer time, but um, I think the generation today, and I think that generation was there. That was a challenge that we were facing earlier also. The new generation, so to say, is someone whom you cannot restrict to work from one place. Even when they were in the organization, there was a challenge of having how do we retain them. So we used to have conversations around that how do we retain this new generation. They are so anxious. They want to do experiment with new things every day. They just want to keep on changing. So they are not changing just because of salary, that you are not giving them salary. They are changing because they are not getting those challenges. So that was the case when they were coming to the office. Now the challenge has shifted even big time. Now you have given them the taste of remote working. Now they are their own boss. They are working from home. They are working in whatever attire they want to do. There is nothing like a professional dress up or that kind of decorum. They are not those kinds of people who are working 9 to 5. You are expecting them to work any time of the day. So when we do that, that means that their expectation is also that we would get flexibility of work. Now compare that to your enterprise. In the enterprise and in the old school of thought, we feel a person has to be in the office, they have to be dressed up properly, they have to attend all the meetings in the right fashion. So now we have to bring out a balance and come up with policies and processes which are employee friendly as well as employer friendly, in a manner that it is a kind of a handshake between the employee expectations and the business expectations or the organizational objectives. Now this could be done in many ways. One such ways could be, instead of making it more like 9 to 5 kind of a job, have that job as more of KRA based or the KPI based job, right? So no matter where you are working from, no matter what time you are working for, you may have to work 10 hours a day, or you may have to complete your work in 2 hours a day, but this is what you have to achieve in maybe a week's time. This is what you have to achieve in a month's time. So even the long term and short term goals, which we used to say, this is my 6-month goal and this is my 1-year goal in appraisals, it has shifted to being 1-month goal, 1-week goal, and then appraising it every quarter rather than appraising it once in a year. You go back to that thing of appraising it once in a quarter. And rather than asking, did you work and fill your timesheet for 8 hours a day? Just ask, have you completed this task that was given to you? So the focus should now be shifted, since everybody is working remotely, so every house is your office. So to say, like if I have 300 employees in my organization, so now so I'm actually running 300 offices, and as a security professional, compliance professional, I have to ensure that all of those 300 houses are compliant. How do I ensure that? To do that, I have to make everybody custodian of that information security. I cannot alone run everything. And that's what I always say, that information security can only be successful if it is embedded in the DNA of the organization, and if every person is feeling that, okay, I am the custodian of information security, take that compliance, take that security into their KRAs, make it a part of their KRAs, make them understand why they need to go for vulnerability management and patching on their systems. If their system is running slow and AV is getting updated from cloud, why is it taking time? Because people need to understand what that is doing to their system.
That's very brilliantly put, because I'm going to pick up a couple of these points and bring it to you, Mala. And Mitali spoke about how increasingly tasks of today and perhaps the job roles of tomorrow and the tasks and the responsibilities of tomorrow are perhaps going to become more outcome based. And my question to you is slightly expansive, because I'm going to bring that back to Mitali in a short while, is, has therefore, in your view, work-life balance given way to a more integrated work-life integration?
Yeah. So I think from a work-life balance perspective, if I take a step back, right? Earlier, I think from an enterprise perspective, the official environment where employee is there in the office and that's it. That is the area that no enterprise has to be really worried about. Now we all are working from home, and it's all remote and connected workspace. So uh, what's happening, I think, is because of that, our boundary, there is no boundary at all between the official environment and the your personal space. So uh, I think from a work life balance perspective, it is managing your work wherever the demand is there. And I also strongly believe that there is nothing called a balance. Wherever you need a time, there has to be focus. You give that time. And say, for example, there are cases where you have a lot of meetings, and you have to be there for, say, for the next year goal planning. You have to be there. So you have to focus there. And there are cases where your family needs, with the COVID in current situation, where family needs your time. So you have to focus on that. I think the key point is both organization and employees have to understand and have that empathy that there is a need for an employee to spend some time with the family. At the same time, employee also have to see where they have to focus from a opportunities perspective or a organization need perspective.
So that's very interestingly put, because Nitali, I'm going to bring that to you. And my question to you is as follows. As we look ahead towards digital workspaces in the future, like you rightly said, 4,000 employees, 4,000 offices. I want you to answer two questions which are fairly well coupled. The first is, do you feel that organizations and enterprises are going to expect far more from their employees tomorrow than they did about 15, 16 months back? That's number one. Given that now that you have the democratic flexibility, the freedom, the experience to be able to do so much more with technology, my question really is, are our enterprises going to be expecting more from Arjun Vishwanathan, the employer? That's number one. Number two, as we look ahead at the tenets of the future of work, do you feel empathy is going to play a very, very big role there, or none at all? Mithali.
So both the questions again would represent the workplace of future or the current workplace, so to say. As far as expectations are concerned, see, even when we were working from office, the expectations were always there. Your manager will always expect you to do the best, right? If you are a good performer or a star performer in the organization, expectations would also increase because you have set that benchmark for yourself, and that benchmark has to increase. So those would be there. However, what I really feel is that enterprises now have become even more mature in terms of that human element, like Mala mentioned about empathy. So I think that empathy has definitely come in because earlier I remember it was not expected that when you're working from home you would have some voices coming from the background. There would be something in your background which is not good. You should have a virtual environment which is very nice. You should be very decently dressed up and all that. But over a period of time, I think employers and the senior management have also realized that you are working from home, and home is home. It is not an office. You are invading the home by taking your office there. So you have to respect the culture and tradition of people who are staying in that house, and you are actually invading that house and making it turn into your office. So if a child is coming, or if there is a sound of television coming from the background, or if there are some vendors going on, I mean, earlier people, I saw some people used to get annoyed. Oh, why this is happening? Oh, mama, go from here. Why are you doing this? Yeah, but I think over a period of time, even, I mean, I have been used to remote working from I think 5-6 years now. But even in those 5-6 years, and if you ask me for the last 2 years, I think I have also transformed as a person. Earlier, I also used to think, oh, my background should look good. Oh, this should look good. Nobody should come here. Oh, I used to, yeah, I used to tell my daughter, my video call is going on. Don't, make sure you are not coming here. Now I am also like a bit at ease with myself. It's okay. We are at home. And this is going to stay. So enterprises are understanding that they are trying to bring up policies which are friendly. Many organizations are offering leaves, which is like COVID leaves, stress relieves. They are organizing sessions on yoga, on stress management. So the focus has changed from having sessions on just technology, to having sessions on these kinds of things which are even more interesting. And even your managers, when you talk to them now, they have that element of empathy where they will first ask you, is everybody okay at house, even if they are in US or anywhere, because it's a global pandemic and you need to understand that you can't just be even as compliance team, we have made our processes a little bit lenient. We cannot say, okay, your patches were not done in 14 days, so this is not done, why were you not doing it?
Because Mala, I'm going to come to you therefore, and I'm going to pick up on one particular aspect where Mitali spoke about the evolution of maturity within organizations today to be comfortable and adapt to a lot more that was traditionally looked down upon or was not looked at as or looked up as being professional. But my question to you is in tune with this. As organizations evolve, we've also seen that the evolution of technology has been very, very significant. When you look at these two curves, hypothetically, the evolution of Indian industry and enterprise has been slightly slower than the adoption or the rate of evolution of technology. My question to you is, when do you see and how do you see the two converging? The maturity of organizations to adopt a technology that promises to deliver superior outcomes, as well as for technology to be ready there to truly adopt the future concepts of the future of work by itself.
Yeah, so I think from a technology standpoint, because uh, we have seen this digital transformation which is happening, right? In the last, I would say, last 5 years, we have seen a lot of revolution happened in the telecommunication industry. Like that, we have seen a lot of focus getting, no, is there on the data related, because you have a lot of data. And just to give you an example, if we take in India itself, most of the common people have mobile. So that means all the products related to mobile captures those data, and there are a lot of technologies required to process that data to make certain no, whether it is user experience improvement or from a business decision perspective.
Classically, to build more intelligent enterprises of the future.
Exactly. So that is just one aspect of the technology. And now with the current business demand, we also, as I mentioned earlier, we everybody needs a speed. And also from a product perspective, they need 100% or 99.99% availability of the products. So these all does not happen just like that. It needs a technology that will support whether it is scalability or availability, security, etc. Right? So I think the technology we in the last I would say decade, we have seen a lot of technology around that. And apart from that, I think from an infrastructure perspective also, we have seen a lot of transformation happened, right? Earlier, we used to have a lot of VMs where virtual machines where these products used to be getting deployed. But we have now the new technology cloud, which provides that kind of scalability, availability, etc. So I think as the technology changes, as the future demand changes, technology is also getting evolved in a very rapid space, rapid pace, right? But the only thing is that I think we as a people have to really catch up that speed so that we can adopt and be able to meet these business needs.
That's very, very true. But I do have a view on the clock, ladies, and I do know that you've got hard schedules ahead. But Mitali, I must, as we kind of taper towards the end of this segment, I must ask you this. Is if you were to be, and as you look ahead into the true digital workspaces of the future, basis all that we've discussed. And if you were able to fashion the operating model for the future of work as an employee as well as the enterprise, how would you think and how would you create an operating model?
So I would again start with the same thing. I would start with my risk assessment. I would go in and see what are my business objectives, and based on those business objectives and the regulatory compliances or the compliances that I have to work with, what are those mandatory set of controls that I really need to have for the organization? Out of those mandatory controls, what all controls can I automate? What element of automation can I bring in? There would be some controls which can be moved from on-prem to cloud. Some controls would be where I may need to introduce data security tools. Some controls would be where I would need to have some analysis tools, which is like my AI ML, a new way of looking at the SOC controls. Some would mean revamping my policies on my current policies on my BCP, access control, zero trust, all of that. So network control, because everything changes right now. How I look at my security, how I look at my compliances will move from my compliances at the infrastructure level on-prem to how, like, let's say if I'm using AWS, Azure, whatever I'm using for cloud, how secure is that? What are they compliant with? What would be their standards? What is the ease of operability and that kind of availability for my employees? I mean, how comfortable and that ease of use for them. I don't want to impose compliances on them, because now there is a lower level of patience when it comes, like, in the office, you can actually take your laptop and you can go and bang it on your IT person and say that, hey, this is not working. In the remote setup, it becomes difficult because IT person is not there. So you need to have those controls which are reliable and which are scalable and available.
That is the enterprise angle of it. As an employee,
as an employee, definitely I would want that, I have a fast system. I have my IT team available whenever I want to connect with them. I have controls which are easy to use. I have policies in the organization which also give me some time off, which can help me do it. I have some relaxation in terms of the, most of the times on our office laptops, we would block all the sites, we would block the USBs, and also some kind of flexibility around it. Yes, there can be some deterrent controls and some compensating controls to help understand that, okay, if you are not abiding with this, then these are the actions that you are taken. So employees should be made aware of it. But yes, you need more flexibility when it comes to working, and make that entire way of working performance based rather than performance and KRA based, rather, and goal oriented, short term goal oriented, rather than asking them to log in for 9 hours. You can't expect somebody to log in at 9 and log off at 6, and then again you call that person at 7 saying that I need your help.
No, not at all possible. That's a fascinating articulation. Mala, same question. Because in conclusion, I come to you, ask you, and seek your perspectives on a typical work day in the future, where industry has adopted the tenets of the future of work and has created, in the truest sense, the digital workspaces of the future.
So you are asking about the day looks like, or
How will the employee and the enterprise coexist, collaborate, innovate, and drive incremental outcomes that are sustainable, that are value oriented, and yet that have the human elements of empathy built at the very foundational pillar?
Yeah, so great question. I think this, again, I'll go back to the current pandemic, has taught us lot many lessons towards the, being empathetic, and also be able to have the vision for the organization, and have these technology everything in place, so that we are able to handle this current situation, right? So just to tell you, in Dell we had work from home or a remote connecting workspace 10 years back. So that is the kind of environment you want to work with. I think from an employee perspective, it will be like they will be more driven towards the outcome. And as Mitali mentioned, they will be more focused towards the KPI rather than just, okay, these are the number of hours that they have to spend. And from an organization perspective, organization will invest a lot of investment on the tools which will enable employee to be able to collaborate well, also be able to innovate and have that open culture where open and diverse culture where team members can bring their ideas and without really worrying about who brought the idea. So
Absolutely, yeah. That would be collaboration in its truest sense. But I do have a view on the clock, ladies. But I'm quite greedy this way. Mala, you spoke very importantly about a lot of lessons that the last 15, 16 months have taught us. If I were to ask you, Mala, the person, your biggest learning could be personal, it could be professional. Thanks to the last 15, 16 months, that's going to stay with you for a long, long time to come.
yeah, I think it was not a lesson learned. I think I would say it just got confirmed with this pandemic. I always believe in, I do not have two face, one in office and one in home. It's both same, Mala same at office and home. When it comes to collaboration, having a thoughtful discussion, so that is there today in home as well as in office. So what I meant is, with that culture and the attitude, I'm able to manage my home and office well.
That's very beautifully put. But Mithali, and therefore in conclusion, your biggest learning that's going to stay with you for a long, long time.
So, as I said, remote working has always been there. I mean, I have been with my organization for almost 14 years now. And the primary reason why I am there with that organization, I mean, people keep asking me, why don't you move on? Why? Because it's like a family. I mean, I don't, like Mala said, it's not two faces over there. And they give me the flexibility to work right from the day one that I joined the organization. So from there till here, I think I have been with the organization and I am happy staying here. I mean, it's and I think pandemic has taught me, what I have learned is that it's not always money that matters, it's also personal satisfaction that matters. And at the end of the day, you, since you are working for office, you are working for home, you as a person need some space for yourself as well, so you need to learn to say no at times as well.
That's
So
very,
that's something that I have learned.
No, it clearly beautifully articulated, I must say, and it clearly emerges that I think one of the foundational cores of creating the future of work for organizations today as well as tomorrow is going to be to focus on culture very, very importantly. And I'm supremely grateful to both of you, Mala and Mithali, for having articulated it in such supreme fashion. But that pretty much is what we have time for in this segment. Mithali, thank you. It was a privilege. Mala, equally a privilege to have been in dialogue with you.
Same here, Arjun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And for the audience, that was your host, Arjun Vishwanathan, in dialogue with Mala Bhatt and Mithali Sharma. Stay tuned with us, and we'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
Thank you very much, Mala, Mitali, and Arjun, for sharing your thoughts and enlightening us. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we move forward to our next session, the CIO Diaries. Prioritizing innovation today is the key to unlocking post-crisis growth. For innovation to succeed, it must be met halfway by reliability, that all-important ingredient to unlock the true value of an enterprise. Let's look at how organizations are developing a comprehensive digital workforce strategy that enables them to drive higher revenues, attract and retain talent, and outperform the competition in a hyper-connected world, all centered around the workstation. Please join me as I welcome Mr. Tejveer Bogle, Head Governance, Alliances, and PMO at BCCL. Joining the session, we also have with us Mr. Harnath Babu, CIO for KPMG India. And to moderate the discussion, let's welcome Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategic. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I'm going to be in conversation today with two very, very eminent folks from industry who I have the privilege of also calling very dear friends. And the conversation that we're going to have in this particular segment is going to be focused on a very important question. Has industry started faltering by underestimating the power of data as the new proverbial oil, or data as the lifeblood? In fact, data perhaps as a business asset by itself. Because increasingly a growing realization seems to be emerging, one that focuses on early data collection, storing and provisioning, made real, obviously, with an increased use of artificial intelligence and cognitive technologies. My conversation today with these two eminent IT leaders from within industry is going to focus on how organizations should fashion the whole convergence of technology with human capital to not just create the digital workplaces of the future, but to also balance the equations between employee experience and enterprise expectations. And perhaps the role that the humble workstation or the laptop as we know it plays in organizations being able to pivot strategy around this. And to discuss this with me, please put your hands together to welcome in no specific order, Harnath Babu, Chief Information Officer, KPMG. Harnath, welcome, sir, and delighted that you could join us.
Thank you, Arjun. Good to be here.
Thank you. And Tejveer Bhogal, Head Governance Alliances and PMO at the Bennett & Coleman Company Limited, the Times of India Group. Tejveer, delighted and privileged. How are you?
Thank you, Vishwanath, for giving us this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to have an interaction with you.
Gentlemen, we've got 30 minutes of what promises to be a very fascinating conversation, and I'm directly going to come to you. Harnath, with your permission, if I may come to you. This whole concept of being able to fashion new strategy based on data for a more educated and insight-driven acceleration of business outcome. How do you see that coming together within sectors, specifically in your sector too? And how do you see organizations rising up to the, not just the challenges that are posed there, but equally the opportunities that present themselves? Harnath Babu.
Sure. Arjun, I think it's a very good point that data is becoming of paramount importance to most of the organizations today. I think we're in a hyper-connected world. Technology obviously is not only playing a strategic role, but is also really changing the way we do our businesses today, right? And again, it's not anymore the supporting role that the technology as a concept or as a tool, right? It's playing in organizations today. We have seen consumer expectations have really gone up multi-folds in last 1 decade. We have seen the data growing, obviously, in the ratio of that, I would say, exponentially, right? So X raised to X, right? So that's the kind of exponential growth that we have seen. It's not linear growth. We're actually seeing exponential growth of data, which may mean that you have to really make sense of what is happening in organizations. Every organization which is digitized today or digitalized today necessarily has to have, to make sense of the data, right? I think that's important, right? And with all the digital upstarts which are upending the traditional businesses, right? I think it makes more sense to continue to be on innovation mode using technology and leverage what is getting generated out of this digital business, right? So that's important. I think CIOs have, to my mind, has a very major role to play, right? I mean, we've had discussions in the past multiple times, role of CIO changing, chief innovation officer to chief information officer, all that's been happening, right? I think CIOs have to now really take the next big step, which is basically becoming a business leader from a technology leader, right? Because business is no more anymore independent of technology, right? Indeed. And what's important is they have to drive business value through sustainable innovation, as well as have to make sure that the organization is leveraging the best-in-class technology as the organizations are changing, right? And we have seen in last 1 year, most of the organizations have really struggled much either to become more resilient, especially with the COVID coming in, or getting onto digital transformation journey because they wanted to really catch up with the startups which are really disrupting the business, right? So I think with all that happening, I think the role of CIOs become more and more, I would say, important, not only transforming the front offices, but also middle offices and back offices, right? Obviously, the organization has to get involved into, I would say, incremental innovation, right? They have to continue to look at the emerging technologies like AI, ML, RP, and things like that. Obviously, that'll bring in those elements of innovation in everything that the organization is doing. Another important thing that we have learned in last couple of years is cloud obviously is coming to the center stage. Anything that you're trying to do, everything that you're trying to do, cloud obviously comes into play. And again, two reasons to this. One is organizations need that agility when they're trying to really innovate. Second is cloud providers are also pushing it hard, right? So I think both the things are playing well, right? And not limited to the technology changes that the organization need to look at or the CIOs need to look at. It's all about employee experience also, right? So we're talking about human capital, which is delivering the value to the organization. So it's about their experience. It's about bringing the right collaboration tools, bringing in analytics so that right kind of decisions can be taken by the organization using the HR and learning tools that can be brought in for employees to make sure that they are always upskilled, right? I think that's more important. And at the end of the day, technology has to be leveraged for enhancing employee experience, right?
It's a very powerfully articulated point, Harnath, because with your permission, I'm going to bring that to you, Tejveer. Harnath very supremely articulated the whole concept of how technology and the tools that it enables is helping organizations such as yourselves enhance employee productivity, employee experience. But equally, the question remains is how pivotal do you see the convergence of technology and human capital coming together to fashion different outcomes or maybe incremental outcomes led by the discovery of data and the leveraging of data? Tejveer Bhogal.
So thanks, Arjun. So let me bring a very different perspective to it. I think over the last so many decades, technology was always a big contributor and an influencer to any enterprise or business, and the way it was being conducted. But never has been the case where technology has led the businesses to evolve. Okay, and that is where, when you make the statement that is data is very pivotal to any organization today, I think the industrial revolution 4.0, which mentioned data is the new oil, I think that's something which is coming into the forefront in totality. And technology led enablement of the business is the key today. We are no longer that stepchild, or we used to get a stepmother's treatment or a stepson's treatment, but then we have gone over and above all of that, and we are now the front runners to lead the businesses to really achieve what we have desired, especially post the pandemic scenario. And a couple of things which are very important or critical factors for that is, number one, the need for speed. I think businesses have now realized that the sooner the better. Can we deliver it in a fraction of a second? Mm-hmm. That's very important. And that also kind of attacks the competition edge. Okay. The second point is do more for less. We have all seen that every enterprise, every organization has taken a hit on their revenue. And, there have been rumors and there have been initiatives around cost optimization or rationalization of the spends. So how is it that we can achieve more by spending less? And that's where technology plays a very, very key role. And of course, Harnath also talked about the impact of employee productivity. Now, what are we saying on employee productivity? It is not just the employee satisfaction or the really putting in or giving into the demands of the employee, but also as to see how we can leverage the investments that we are doing for the employees and extract the maximum value out of this.
That's very interesting. I quite like the facet you brought out, because gentlemen, and Harnath, of course, I do come to you. It brings me to then maybe perhaps a very, very fundamental question is, in our quest for transformation and digitally native forms of thinking within the enterprises that each of you run and operate, transformation perhaps is equivalent to modernization to a larger degree. From that perspective, and both of you spoke so supremely about the concept of data. Data at the end of the day is generated a lot. If you leave alone the sensors that are parts of connected machines and so on and so forth, there's copious volumes of data that's been collected in what is called the humble workstation or the laptop. How important is the end point towards not just the generation and collection and processing of data, but in also being able to fashion newer streams of innovation based on the data that is collected on this. And therefore, my question to you, Harnath, is how important is equally the tool that I work on as an employee? How important do you see that being in the overall scheme of things?
Arjun, so I think it's a very good question, and certainly I think to the earlier point of employee productivity, right? I think one thing which has now come out very clearly that with the remote and hybrid working environments, I think employees will have to continue to stay engaged with the organization as well as continue to stay productive, right? The only window that the employee has to the organization is a laptop.
Indeed.
Right? I want to have a conversation with my boss, I need a laptop, right? Because I'm on a Teams call. I need to have a conversation with my team, I need to have a laptop. I need to have conversation with my peers, I need to collaborate with them, I need to have a conversation with the clients, I need to work on I need to work on a deliverable, I need to have a laptop, right? So I think my whole world starting from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning up to 10 o'clock in the night is a laptop, right? Nothing beyond that. If it was the earlier days when you could go to the offices, you had time to travel, your car, your office, your desk, your water cooler discussions, you had a lot of things going on, right? Now, the only thing that you have is your laptop, the whole world, right? And again, if that laptop sucks, sorry to use this word, but if that sucks, I don't think it's the best experience that we're giving to an employee, right? And to my mind, devices are the production houses now, right? So, or the factories, right? If you're working from remote, that's a factory, and that's the only factory you're working, right? I think what's important from an endpoint perspective is it has to be the best in class from a collaboration point, number one. Number two, the productivity obviously has to be multifold as you're working from remote because you have to stay engaged, you have to continue to work. You can't have issues when you're working from remote. You need to have that flexibility. It should be more mobile as a device. It can't be like a clunky device, right? It has to have seamless connectivity because you could be moving from one room to other room, right? The Wi-Fi thing has to work pretty well. And if you have your own choice from a device perspective, you should be able to bring your own device, and the organization should be able to support. Saying that that's fine. You can bring your device. I'm going to giving you a VDI kind of an environment. You operate in whichever device, right? So I think it has come to a multi-dimensional complexity when it comes to experience of employees from a device perspective, right? And not only limited to the experience, but I think also important is the security aspect. Now you have left the employee to work from some location. Earlier they were working in your office. You were comfortable, sure that it's a secure environment. The employee is now sitting outside. You're not even sure where he's sitting and working, right? Have you given the right kind of security tools on the platform or the device, which is ensuring that the data is secure of the enterprise? In case of a loss of an asset, in case of let's say something happens, you are able to protect the data, right? Do you have, and with the whole work from remote, the social engineering efforts that the hackers are trying to do, are you making sure that you are able to protect not only the data but also the employees, right? From that, and again, this is the only source of protection, be it ATP, ransomware protection, or malwares, or anti-phishing, you name it. I mean, you need to have those kind of things so that. And last but not the least, is the employee able to work productively, and are you giving him insights onto how is he actually using his time? Is he creating boundaries between his personal life to official times? Is he spending more time in collaboration? Is he spending more time in only working on documentation, documents, coding, whatever that may be, right? Are you giving that insight so that the employee is also able to adjust his or her timings, right? Or let's say work schedules. I think these are multifaceted, demands from one that small box which is sitting in front of you. It has to work, right? I mean, this might be.
That is indeed true, because that's exactly what I'm going to bring to you, Tejvi. And Harnath pretty much encapsulated a lot of these things. So when you are sitting crafting strategy, as I do know at BCCL, because I had the opportunity of recently speaking with Amit Das, and we had a very interesting conversation. My question to you is, as you increasingly prepare to cater to a new millennial digital workforce with tons of talent, how important does experience, and therefore this humble tool, play in your overall strategy in being able to balance employee experience and expectations versus the enterprise expectations? Because, well, at the end of the day, the cardinal truth is that enterprise expectations and outcomes are the sacrosanct fact of the matter. Tejveer Bhogal.
As always, you are great to put me on a spot, Arjun. And, and you always ask me that $1 million question as to, how to balance between the enterprise expectations and the end user expectations. There's no simple answer to that in my mind, Arjun, because from an enterprise perspective, we would want to extract the maximum value that we are investing for an employee. But, and you mentioned your discussion with Amit, from his perspective, it is the overall employee experience which matters the most. So if I were to put myself in the employee shoe for a moment and see, I would want the best of the devices, which cater to almost every aspect of my work-related applications available to me so that I can do my work peacefully and quickly. Okay, that's the kind of experience that I'm looking at. In the erstwhile era, if I may call the pre-pandemic era as the erstwhile era, because the norms have changed, right? The baseline has shifted. So if I were to compare that, everything was available to me on the drop of a hat. I pick up the phone and call an engineer. The engineer is there and he will do everything for me, whatever I ask him or her to do. So, that was the case. But today, everything has to be done by myself or facilitate a remote session to ensure that the engineer does the work for me. Okay. Now, that is one side of the experience, which Amit was referring to, as to how we can ensure that we get a seamless experience to the end user, plus the application, plus the compatibility of those applications, plus the hardware compatibility, the device compatibility. I want the best of the systems, but all of this comes at a cost, my dear friend. Now, that cost has to somehow be managed in such a manner that we are able to extract we are able to monetize that. And how does that monetization happen? That's the expectation of the enterprise world. Are we able to ensure that with the new device which the employee is giving, one, is the legacy application compatible? Number two, are we able to ensure that the task which was being done by that particular employee in 2 hours with the new device, can it be done in lesser time?
Yeah.
Okay. And third, can we look at some more frills and add-ons to the output of what the employee is offering us? Okay, can he do more with the same device? It is all about, I won't say multitasking, but multi-output. Can that be attained by the same device? Because if I were to look at certain set of users, they were using multiple workstations for different output. Today, because of remote working or work from home, can I expect the same output from a single device or a very high-end workstation for that matter? Because see, we are coming from a media. So see, all this discussion is coming from a media perspective. The person who is supposed to do designing is also supposed to do some other work. And for that, he had multiple devices. Can I replicate that in his home or in her home? No, not possible. Achievable, but with lot of challenges. Can I bring in that device and see, can all that be encapsulated in one single device and then delivered? That's the expectation of the enterprise per se.
No, that's a very fascinating point, isn't it, gentlemen? Because therefore it begs the question also, and one that I think is interesting yet very important perhaps for all of us to address. I'm going to give you, gentlemen, the following variables. So you've got the digital workforce here, or the gig economy to a large degree, where I may not really be an employee of an X organization, but I may be under contract to be able to deliver a certain set of outcomes. So you have the digital workforce at one end. You've obviously got great machines and great tools today to work on. And of course, you've got organizations have come up to being able to fashion for me the flexibility of working from wherever. And that is in fact a truth. When you kind of boil this all down together, Harnath, I'll come to you first. Do you somewhere feel or do you somewhere observe that the expectations or the estimations of organizations from their employees has radically changed to expecting, and I say this in a very considered manner, to expecting significant incremental outcomes and or innovation? So do you think the coming together of all of these three variables is reflective of enterprise expectations of higher degrees of innovation as well as higher degrees of incremental outcomes? And is it fair?
Arjun, I think we are in a fast-moving world, right? So I think it's a fair expectation from an enterprise that the employees have to have higher productivity. I don't think the enterprise are shying away from investing into technology or investing into capabilities, which is making sure that it is getting the right kind of value out of the employees. That's number one. Number two, if you don't think ahead of time, right, you may succumb to the current situation, right? I think what's important is as situations are changing, especially in the current scheme of things, let's say people are working from remote, the flexibility that the organizations are giving is far ahead, let's say far, I would say ahead in comparison to what it was a couple of years back, or let's say a year back, right? I think the ask is very simple. I will invest in you. You please deliver your best, right? Uh, and it's about it's about also taking a right balanced view of work life. I mean, we used to talk about work life balance in the past, right? Now the whole idea of work life balance is gone. It's about work life harmony. Harmony, right? So you need to harmonize your work, and again, technology is supporting that. You can't say I'm going to be logging into work at 9 and logging off at 5. It doesn't work like that. You have to practically be available. You should be able to manage work. I think that's the whole idea. So to come to your point, I think it's fair to expect from an employee that they have to deliver, right? It's also important equally for enterprises to invest, right, into employees. And I'm saying employees or the capabilities and facilities, so that the innovation continues to happen. And as you rightly said, innovation is also another equally demanding job, which most of the employees are asked to. Because if you let's say if let me take an example, while most of my people would be working on operations or application development things and things like that, but at least I have a 20% KRA of their goal. I mean, 20% of their goals as a KRA, which talks about process improvements and innovation, right? Minimum, right? And the idea is very simple, right? You can't be doing the same thing that you were doing in the past. So I think I would say I won't call it a chicken and egg, but it's a continuous evolution, right? So you have to continue to evolve. So.
Oh, fantastic. Tejveer, I come to you with the same question. Should we expect more? Is industry indeed expecting more? And do you think, I'll just add on a complementary or a supplementary point to it, is are industries and organizations therefore equally responsible in being able to assist employees in being able to achieve more? But fundamentally the same question, Tejveer Bhogo.
So I'll make it very personal for me, okay? I think so, personally speaking, organizations like us have been always focused on one word, which is inclusivity. And we as an organization, we take pride in stating that whether it is innovation or whether it is any other initiative which impacts the organization, we have been always one of those leaders and front runners to really get going on such impactful programs, if I may use the word program. So when it comes to innovation, I think that the term is not new for us. I've spent almost about 7 years over here, and the day I joined, I realized that it's running in every employee's blood per se. And that's why we are so passionate about what we do. I went through the induction program in a jiffy, actually. It was just about a 1 hour of induction program, because right from word go, it was, you have to deliver this, you have to deliver that, and there was no time for induction. But then what it really showed me was that, yes, every employee is contributing to some innovation or the other. And that is where the word innovation and BCCL, they are synonyms to each other. We have taken pride in stating that, yes, we have been the leaders and we are the first ones to innovate and introduce so much in our arena. And it is always a matter of pride for us when we see the competition always following up on that. So, let's talk about, the newspaper industry per se. We were the first ones to introduce metal jackets. I don't know if you really can correlate to the metal jacket. It was not a metal sheet, but yeah, the glaziness of the entire, jacket that comes on the newspaper. That was, again, a thought given by an employee. The color coding, on the newspaper. That's again a employee innovation. The cost optimizations in so many aspects, again employee contributions. So point which I'm trying to make is, for us, it's natural to innovate, and that's our culture per se, and that's been driven right from the leadership level, right at the shareholder level. So I think for us, it's okay, it's normal. But then yes, for many other enterprises, to your point, Arjun, yes, it's coming. It's prudent now. If you do not innovate, I think it will be very tough for enterprises to survive. Because if you are not innovating, your competition will, and somewhere or the other, it will have a negative impact. So yes, even to Harnath's point, I think every person should be able to contribute and see as to how they can give it back to your organization, to your own organization, and you should be passionate about it. Is what I'll say.
Very brilliantly put, gentlemen, but I do have a view on the clock. We've got 5 minutes. Harnath, I'm going to come to you, therefore, in large degree in the form of conclusion is, we've got a great audience that's tuning in with us today. Your peers, IT folks, folks who will be leaders in their own right tomorrow. When you look at this whole concept of modernization, not just of processes but also modernization of thought processes. And I'm again coming back from the whole point of employee experience and the ability to foster a rich and a true culture of innovation. What is your advice to folks today in being able to modernize the infrastructure in a prudent manner, such that it is not just optimized in terms of the investments that organizations will do, but also in its ability to ensure, and I use this word in a considered manner, ensure incremental outcomes? Harnath Babu.
Sure. So I think and the only advice that I have is when you're getting onto a journey of transformation, I think one of the biggest challenges most of you would face is, or in fact, all of us faced, is typically the budgeting part, right? So when you say you need to invest, right, the first question asked is what is the value that you're going to be delivering, right? And one of the fallacies of budgeting cycles is you always look on the left side, you don't look on the right side, right? Left is what's my cost, and right is what is my output, right? I think it's important for each one of us or each one of you to actually look at, how am I spending every penny and giving the value out, right? The right value to the enterprise that I'm working with, right? That's number one. Number two is not limited to, don't get pulled in by the romance towards hype, right? Don't think about technology first. Think about a business problem to start with and try to solve with. Technology comes at the end of the day. I mean, while we say technology is first, but technology comes at the end. You need to solve a business problem. So don't get in love with technologies, right?
Very true.
Third, have a very clear strategy on so you have to transform yourself to start with, right? So we're getting into transformation of the organization. First, transform yourself. Am I built right to deliver what the organization is expecting? Am I built from a capability perspective? Am I having the right kind of technologies? Am I able to even correlate with what business is saying? Do I have the domain understanding, right? Transform yourself first as an organization, which is a technology organization, then go and have a conversation with the business. Stay very close with the business. I think these are some of the things that I can think of, Arjun, but it's a big topic to kind of.
That's a very powerfully articulated point. Tejveer, you have the floor.
So just 2 points to add to what Harnath said. I think it's also very important to understand the legacy environment that we live in, and how is it that we can address the legacy aspect of the applications and the overall architecture that we have, the enterprise architecture landscape. Once we are able to look at that and then rebuild that into a modern architecture, modern enterprise architecture, I think that's another aspect that one needs to consider. And I think another very important point is that of change management. How the employee will take that entire modernization or transformation journey. And that's when the leadership team and the HR in particular will play a very, very critical role or a crucial role.
That's absolutely true. And I perhaps couldn't have agreed more to each sentence of the articulation that both of you gentlemen brought to the table, because Harnath, Tejveer, this is one of those brilliant conversations, but I dare say that's pretty much what we have time for in this segment today. Harnath, Tejveer, it has been nothing short of a privilege having had this dialogue with you. Thank you so much. We are truly privileged.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, I was in conversation, your host Arjun Vishwanathan, with Harnath Babu and Tejveer. That's all for this segment. Stay tuned and we'll be back in just a moment with the next segment.
Thank you very much, Tejveer, Harnath, and Arjun. That was indeed insightful and engaging. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to a conclusion of today's proceedings and would request you to please fill in the feedback form. Your feedback is absolutely essential to us. Please do feel free to mention any suggestions or recommendations that you have for us, as this helps us enhance the content, structure, and delivery of our conferences. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you once again for having taken out your valuable time to join us today and look forward to seeing you soon. Stay safe, stay healthy, and do enjoy the rest of your day.